We can speak freely at last. No, I'm just joking. David, do you want to jump in about the being in the zone, in the flow, in the resonant frequencies?
Yeah, so just sort of, some of the topics that have been uh, discussed, the pattern that keeps coming up is the idea of restriction of information, trying to confuse people, obfuscate, government scientists' theories, like all this kind of stuff, right? Some of it valid, some of it, whatever. There's fuckery about, right? Um, in the context that Sasha's describing the flow of data with remote viewing, I'm just noting that because what I'm going to say to a certain degree, in my opinion, this is just my opinion on observation of this, is that remote viewing, if you look at the CRV manuals, controlled remote viewing, coordinate remote viewing, this is what they call it, the military Stargate guys, if you actually look at their documentation for that process, they strictly forbid you to look at the target directly, visually. And instead, they want you to use automatic writing through feelings. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that approach. However, Sasha and I, we use protocols where you actually look and see the target directly. Now she has aphantasia, so her experience is a bit different. Although, like she said, sometimes she actually does see the target directly. Like that does happen, which is quite fascinating to me, considering that she's got an issue that prevents her from doing that. So, like, to me that bears some more study personally to try to understand the benefits of decoding that. But for me, I frequently see the visuals directly, and they can range from shadowy, cloudy, murky kind of stuff, right? But you can sort of get the gestalt or the Rorschach test, or you kind of like are able to pull out enough details to go like, yeah, that's a shape of a house, right? You can't really tell a lot of other details, like you can't tell the siding of the house, or maybe the age of the house, things of that nature. But it can move up to levels of photographic or movies, or by location where you actually physically feel like you're there and you're seeing the target. So that's just sort of one piece of information. And so, yeah, when we're in the flow, there was I forget, JT, I think his name was. Yeah, my perspective is very much a consciousness perspective, but but we are, like Sasha said, bound by materialism. So I see the full spectrum. My focal point for me, my whole life, has been the pursuit of enlightenment, which includes a range of experiences that are in the psychic. I've had contact experiences. I've had all sorts of different experiences, but these are all derivatives of an effort, meaning that I believe many others, or basically anybody else, can do the same thing. That some of this is some of it maybe happens randomly, whatever kind of thing, or maybe you have predispositions, but I also believe strongly, based on my experiences, that you can grow yourself or grow your consciousness, so to speak. And so, yeah, I would say that Sasha and I, when we remote view, have a more ontological perspective in terms of how the data actually comes in and how we deal with it. And so it's a very different, when you kind of like, there are ranges to this. The regular remote viewing has sort of a certain. Oh, am I still there? Oh yeah, sorry. I just saw the little things not light up. Regular remote viewing has a kind of a bucket that you're stuck in my opinion. Um, but you can start to move through experience and development far beyond that. And when you do that, that's when you start getting into some of these things that Sasha's talking about. And that's where we start to see evidence that the alpha state is actually possibly much more important than the theta state, which is what the current remote viewing kind of fixates on. And yeah, I'm just going to kind of stop there.
Thank you, David. That was awesome.
Oh, sorry about that, you guys. I don't know if we lost Ulrich to the chart. Thank you, David. Thank you, Sasha. Oh, here he is.
I'm still here. I am drowning in the charts, but I'm still here, you guys. Yeah, and friends, I didn't mean to short circuit all your questions. I know you had a bunch.
Oh no, you didn't. You didn't short circuit. Where did we leave off on those questions? Sasha, did you say, I think you said Canada doesn't fare well, but do you have any idea where you end up? Canada and or the United States, where we end up? And then are you guys up for taking questions besides mine and Ulrich's?
Yeah, I think we're up for questions. I do wish the conversation had been recorded. And I'm just trying to figure out in my mind how we can do that, because I really do think some of this information I would like it to get out.
Yeah,
Well,
I would like it to get out too. And you
here's-
guys, I'm terribly sorry. In a rush, when the last one, crashed from my phone, I just immediately started a link, and I did it from the computer, and I didn't see. I just assumed it was like I didn't even think to check whether the record switch was on there.
Well, yeah, I'm not upset with you at all. No, it's just more the situation, and these things seem to happen. David,
Well,
you're
I'm upset with me, Sasha. So you're welcome to join me.
Well, here's the funny thing. Somebody else that interviewed us, the exact same thing happened. The exact same thing. And it was, I'm saying this pattern I don't think is necessarily specific to you. And I see reality as more of a simulation model. I try to look at it from different models, but a simulation model is definitely as useful. And my experiences, direct experiences, have indicated that stuff like this can happen in terms of influences. So I'm just noting that I find it to be interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought of that as well, David. Like this is the second time in like 6 weeks that we go into detail into data and then oops, it wasn't recorded. It happens though, but yeah, it does seem to be happening with increasing frequency.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
I agree that everything, aliens, whatever, NASA are conspiring against any pole shift information coming out. But I have a reputation for just being vicious with anybody who doesn't record any spaces. And here I am doing an unrecorded space. Yeah. So I'm the very last person who has any excuses for this, even with alien intervention. So I'm truly sorry, you guys. And this information will come out. We'll do follow-up space. And if you want me to quickly throw up a link and so it records moving forward, like however you guys want to run this is how we'll run it.
We can have another conversation and maybe just recap the highlights, the most important parts. I'll ramble less, but and we can talk maybe less about the technicals and more just about the effects, maybe.
And I'm probably going to do a few not impromptu spaces, but I'm probably, and I hope Fringe joins me for these, but I'm probably going to do a full reading of Chan Thomas's Adam and Eve story. Where and then people can come up and talk about each chapter, right? Because I think a lot of people aren't going to read this book, and you guys are more than welcome to come up and talk with me about that book.
Thank you. And one of the things I want to put out there is if anyone wants to talk to me about Harsan, any knowledge that you have, maybe your grandfather told you about it, or maybe the group that you're in has let you in on some information, please reach out to me because I'd like to talk about it.
Yeah, and you could do that through, if you find us on YouTube or Patreon, Magic in the Noise. These are some of the ways that you can access us if you need to share that information. I'm sure Sasha would enjoy any other feedback that you have or insights from your experiences on any of the information that you heard her talk about today.
I thought, Sasha, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, there's, some of the data that comes through, we talk about, some we hold back a little bit. Sometimes in videos, there's one at least where I flash the book on the dais, and I just put like, if you've been here, if you've seen this, send us an email. Let's get in touch. And so these are things where there's some things that are, if you talk about them, the connection goes out, the conversation doesn't get recorded, the internet goes down. There are things like this, right? I used to, for some reason, the bringing up the watchers no longer destroys the internet connection. But there was a while there where if you put in someone's chat something about the watchers, the monitors, the chat would end, or the live stream would have a glitch. And so, like, I think, yeah, that's my story. if you want to get in touch with us, again, MagicInTheNoisie@gmail.com is our email address. We are on Patreon. We are going to be putting more on Patreon. We do put some exclusive content on there. Our Patreon, though, at the moment or up until now, has been more about supporting our endeavor. We're really trying to push the boundaries of what remote viewing can do. Accuracy, precision, getting specific numbers, getting dates, locations. Like I mentioned, we predicted a UFO sighting. We said where it would happen, when it would happen. We were correct. And so these are things that we're trying to push forward on. And so people who are supporting us on Patreon, I think at the moment is less about getting extra content. It's more about just trying to help us do this thing. The monthly live streams, we invite anyone in the remote viewing community or outside of it. But if you know how to remote view and you want to participate, we do put out monthly targets and we invite people to submit them. And then we just pick the top submissions, the ones that have really strong target contact, really good data. We invite them to participate in the live stream, and they come in. We talk about their hits. We talk about the analysis, very light analysis, but it's enough to give people a sense of how that works. We're trying to, build more community around our specific vision for remote viewing. As David said, most remote viewing protocols tell you, don't close your eyes, don't focus on the visuals, don't invite in imagination. Whereas what we do is different. It's influenced a little bit by the Hawaiian Remote Viewing Guild's method, which privileges visual data. And then I've developed full spectrum illumination, and I teach that as an advanced remote viewing course. But this summer, I am launching the intro to it as well as an online course. So these are things that we're doing. David and I both do some research. David has published, I think, more than I have so far on some of these ideas that come up when we're talking about these things and what it means. And on our unlisted YouTube channel, that's where we have conversations about, what's in these declassified CIA documents that are looking into remote viewing, that are looking into remote influencing, what's going on there. We have conversations about that, and some of them we put in videos. And so, yeah, so that's kind of what we do. That's kind of what we are. We want to see remote viewing move beyond the kind of parlor game that in some ways it's to some extent become. You can actually get useful data, operational data from remote viewing when it's done well and properly. And so we're trying to teach people how to do that, help people do that, and just talk about better ways of doing that. David, have I missed anything?
No, that's pretty optimum in terms of the information. Yeah, we're very focused on remote viewing. Wonderful tool. I very much respect the individuals that created it, Stargate program, so on and so forth. But I differ in terms of my opinions on this, which comes from a more analytical perspective combined with my own direct spiritual experiences and the ability to observe the process in real time. But to me, a lot of what we see in the community tends to be pushed more into kind of proof of psi, like they're proving that they can do something that shouldn't be possible. That's wonderful. But I feel like the community itself is not kind of pushed beyond that into what I would consider to be actionable intel. And this is the, going after numbers for sporting events or dates for UFOs or, I predicted the Malaysia earthquake a day before. So these are things to me that are more interesting because I know that it's achievable and possible. And Sasha does too, because she's also done it. So this is more of our kind of focus, is to try to push everything more in that direction.
And I think one of the things that we've said, and I just want to stress again, kind of at this point in the conversation for anyone new who's joined in, remote viewing should be done blind. And as a remote viewer, it's a really, I take it as a sacred responsibility. I see that if I treat the data as sacred, then the data stream appreciates that and then gives me more data. And so I think a lot of people tend to blend in their own biases, their own beliefs, right? So they'll say, this is what I think. And the data started coming in about that, therefore, right? Like we saw the Tic Tacs that now are being contested, they may actually be man-made craft. But I saw when the Tic Tac UFO thing came out, a lot of remote viewers, oh, I remote viewed the aliens that were in the Tic Tac. Okay, well then what do you do when it comes out that actually there were not aliens because the Tic Tac was man-made? And I'm using that as an example. I'm not saying it is man-made or it isn't. I'm just using that as a general example. You see a lot of remote viewers who basically say they're remote viewing, but really they're just talking about what they think. And that's not, in my mind, and for Mint, Magic in the Noise, that's not what we call remote viewing. And if I know what your beliefs are about something, what your opinion is, and from that, I can guess exactly what your data is going to be about a target without even having to see your session, then I don't think you're a good remote viewer. I think you're just you're doing a little bit of psychic swiping at the target, and then you're adding filler data. That's a conversation David and I were having recently about the new video that we're starting to work on. I did a session on the hill from the telepathy tapes. And the data that I got does not align with my beliefs, and it doesn't align with how I see reality or the world. But we still have to report it. That's the data that came
resonate with that, Sasha. Many people's, like 99% of what I talk about is counter to my personality, my personal views, my spiritual views. People think that my personal beliefs are the things that I talk about, and most of my views I hold in the last 3 years, I did not hold at all for the first 35 of them.
Yeah, Doomer, and this is one, and I'm just saying that pattern I think can extend in different levels. Like your experience in a different format, right? But with remote viewing, one of the things that I find just utterly fascinating is I will most of the times not understand, because again, this is blind data. I don't know what I'm getting, right? Sometimes I can get like, okay, this is a house or something, right? But sometimes I get like concepts that don't make any sense, like this is like quantum, but like it's not. And then I try to figure out like, why is it not quantum, but why is it like quantum, right? And you come out with a bunch of information that is stuff that I've never thought about before or heard before. And I'm just like, usually that's the best data. And I usually go like, ah, man, I messed up. I did not hit the target on that one. They get the feedback and you're like, hey, this is some science target that I've never heard of before with concepts that I've never considered. But when you look at the data, you can actually see the representation of that information in the data. And you're like, holy cow. So yeah, this to me is one of the ways that you can kind of see, at least personally, when you're getting good data, is usually you're very confused about what you're getting to a certain degree.
Yeah, the space we're in, about legitimizing parapsychology and remote viewing. This is probably what some people heard when I was talking about the pole shift. But if you talk about people who should know about the pole shift, if you speak with some even NASA scientists, not necessarily people working on the pole shift stuff. But by the way, just so you know, the person thumbs downing Deadbird, I guess they've never been in a doom space. Deadbird, doom spaces, we dive deep into a conversation, and then the guests have the option to open it to audience questions. You could also just listen to the previous spaces, or you could also consider that maybe this space is not like every other goddamn motherfucking UFO space where we're just glorified hand callers. Sometimes people do things differently. So sorry, where was I? I just didn't want you to think you guys were being thumbs down. Deadbird thought it was a personal assault on them that I didn't bring them up, because just like everybody else who's waiting patiently, we haven't brought Deadbird up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot that we were going to take questions from the audience, so we've kind of been
no,
chatting, but
it's
probably
totally
do
up
that.
to you. It's
Yeah,
totally
we
up to
can do
you.
that now. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
If you want to record the questions from the audience, that part, we can start a new link if you want to record them, so that people, have their question recorded, and we can do that.
We can totally do that if you like.
Okay.
Should I throw a new link up?
If you need to do that to record it.
I do need to do that, but it's going to be like 2 minutes tops, and then everybody will be back in the same room.
And then if anybody sneakily, accidentally had their OBS open and recorded this, send us a copy.
That would be amazing. That would be
Oh,
amazing.
someone recorded it. We can guarantee someone recorded it. It's a matter of whether they'll share it or not.
Oh yeah, please share it. Like, you can just, I don't know. I'm excited if people are recording it because I think it's a good idea. But if you're afraid that there's going to be some kind of slap on the wrist, then totally don't worry about it. Send it to us or just send it to me, and I'll anonymously send it to Fringe and Doomer.
Thank you. Yes, if you did record it, you do have my blessing. I am all for recording spaces, and I'll generate a link. I'll call it number 3, and I'll. Man, is there any way? I'm wondering, is there a way that I can do it without ending this space? No, there isn't. It won't show the pop-up.
Call it the Q&A, maybe. Yeah, and then
Q&A.
Yeah, and then when one of you sends me the recording, and I send it to Doomer and
Well,
Fringe.
hang tight. I don't want to. Sorry, go ahead, Sasha.
No, go ahead. I'm just rambling.
No, keep on rambling. It'll help me generate the link.
Well, that's what I was thinking, because I know when I do live streams and then I have to, do something technical, and I just want someone to talk. So like, I'll ask a question to them, and I hope that they give me enough time of just chatter, just speak amongst yourselves while I try to do this. And sometimes like nobody says anything. They're just like, yep. So I'm just trying to fill in the silence for you. But for the listeners, yeah, I'm excited to hear what questions you have. Sorry it took us so long to get to the questions. I forgot that there was going to be questions. So
that's all right, Sasha. We're all dying. We're all one day closer to death now that we've gotten 4 hours into this space.
Has it been 4 hours?
I usually try to help.
Three hours, maybe 3 hours. Sorry, David, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I usually try to help Sasha out by sounding real serious and starting to tell a story that seems like you need to pay attention, and then it turns out just to be a dad joke. But unfortunately, I don't have one in my arsenal right at the moment loaded up.
So what will happen is the space is going to end very much like the other space ended, and then he can post another link in our group called the Q&A space. So if anyone has questions for Sasha or David, please jump up in the next space. Boy, this has been a disaster today. I'm not sure if the two of you, everyone else will understand, but I'm not sure if the two of you quite appreciate how very unlikely it would be for Ulrich not to record a space. First of all, it's the default. So if you've ever recorded a space, when you open up your next space, it's going to be default recorded. And it could have something to do with his computer. I'm not one of those people who just blames the NHI for everything, but in this specific case, I might tend to, just because it is highly out of character for him not to record. We've never been in a space that wasn't recorded for either one of us. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
The only saving grace is that it's not recorded, that I didn't record a space. That is the only
No
thing
one will ever know. No one will know. People say prove it, and then the proof won't be there. So
it's not the worst thing, because the one interview that we did where, I don't know, an hour and 20 minutes in, we were kind of, I don't remember how long we were, but it was about an hour in. The interviewer realized that he hadn't hit record on Zoom. And the thing was, it was a bit heartbreaking, because it was one of those days, sometimes you're just really eloquent, you're concise, like just flowing, no rambling. It was just really, really good. And then we had to kind of try to recapture it. Oh, it was so brutal.
That is so disappointing. That is so disappointing. And now it's happened twice. So that's the beginning of a pattern.
Yeah. Yeah, but I hope people will come to the Q&A link, and you guys can, because you guys have been so good and listening for so long and so patient with us. So we really appreciate it.
Oh, Doom's, everybody here is plugged in to the matrix with catheters and doomer diapers. People want the demon. If you're holding anything back that would cause somebody to shit their pants, do not hold back. This is the space for it. Sasha and David. So in the nest is the link for our Q&A space that we're going to start now. I'm going to gently, gracefully, gingerly end this space, and hopefully we can migrate to the next one. It is default off for recording, the switch when you launch from a Chrome browser, apparently. So this time I took 3 more seconds. Please bear in mind, I'm dealing with like, my mind is literally looking at 6 different windows of charts. And when the space crashed, I was like, oh my goodness, not another thing. It's more than likely I forgot to hit the switch. So it's probably my fault, although I blame aliens anyway.
Sounds good.
So yeah, there's like a 10-15 second delay between the speakers and the audience. So I'm going to hit the end button in about 10 seconds. And do you see the link, Sasha and David? I can DM it to
Yeah,
us.
I don't know where this nest thing that you mentioned, I don't know where that is. So if you can put it in the message.
Yeah, if you take a look at our profile icons right above, you will see a place where you can actually share posts. I will of course put it in our group chat as well.
Okay.
But that link will take us to where the next space will start as soon as I end this one.
Perfect. Thank you. And I will probably just be 30 seconds. I'm just going to grab water and then
That's totally fine. Everybody should hydrate.
Yeah.
And you can always let us know when you need a break or need to use the bathroom or anything.
Perfect.
So we're not gonna end it. We're gonna continue it recorded. Everybody, doom deep, doom dark, doom hard, and join us. Space is already posted on my profile, and I'll throw it in the comments right here as well.
And I'll see you in 30 seconds. Okay.
See you in 30 seconds.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Can anybody hear me? Deadbird, you're first in the queue. We will bring you up as soon as our speakers are ready for you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
It sounds good.
Interestingly enough, I see something that looks like a record symbol.
Oh, is it? I hope it's not a
That's
fake
good.
record symbol. A decoy record. I'm truly sorry.
No, it's all good.
And
No,
I
don't feel
accidentally
bad. Don't feel bad.
I accidentally put June 10th for this one, and I was like, oh great, another mess up, but it let me change the date to June 5th now. I kept on clicking on the link and nothing was happening. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to generate another link. One thing I wanted to touch on, you brought up the financial apocalypse, which is all around us right now. I actually do think so. Bitcoin obviously is not going to protect you from the solar radiation, and anybody running a Bitcoin node, which is what the meaning a computer that mines Bitcoin and processes the transactions. If theirs gets fried and it's not in a Faraday cage, obviously there's no Bitcoin for you. However, the decentralized blockchain is way more reliable from a financial perspective. All you need is a few nodes that are running so that you can actually exchange after like a Carrington event. And so there actually is a way to wipe out all of the debt, and that is to do nothing and not shield the grid, because everybody's money is located on centralized servers, and those are going to get knocked out. So yeah,
That's a good
if
point.
all do you get what I'm saying? Like
100%. Yeah, that's quite, yes, that's very,
yeah,
very, very good
that's something
point.
that some people might want to consider. Part of I do think the bolstering of the potential bolstering of the US dollar through like a Bitcoin reserve or gold reserves, the preference for Bitcoin over gold, or at least a chain over centralized servers, might have something to do with the loss of the grid and the facilitation of like a debt I can't talk, a debt jubilee, right? Sasha and David, are you ready for questions, or do you want me to protect you from the unwashed masses a bit longer with questions?
No, I'm all good. I'm ready. I'm hydrated.
Ready?
I'm
Fringe, how are you feeling? Should we unleash the floodgates?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Dead Bird, you are going to rise like a phoenix. Arizona Birdman, I was born, of all places, in Scottsdale, Arizona. This must be destiny. Give the speaker a few seconds to come up. Dead Bird, can you hear us?
First of all, I just want to apologize for the multiple thumbs up and stuff. I was kind of being a jerk, so apologies.
It's okay. I'm not a believer in emotional blackmail. It's totally fine. I was assuming you were somebody else. There are emoticon and emoji terrorists famous in spaces, and I thought
Yeah,
you were
I
one of
mean,
them.
X has been so glitchy lately. Well, for me, I never know what people are seeing that I'm putting out, and there's all that kind of ambivalence there. So it's no excuse, but yeah, my apologies.
It's no big deal, man. We're dealing with cataclysms, so anybody who can't handle a thumbs down emoji is not going to make it through. So yeah, you have David and Sasha here. Feel free to pose any questions you have for them.
Yeah, so I listened to most of the space on and off. I was kind of ducking in and out. I've been making dinner for my kids right now. I hesitate. This is not about me. This is about you guys. But I do see crazy stuff in the sky every night. I'm recording it and filming it. Something huge is definitely happening. I'm not trying to put it in anyone's. I don't want to change anyone's heart or anything like that. But the personal experiences I've had throughout my life that intensified in October, November for I think a lot of us, definitely seem correlated to my lifelong experiences. And when I read words like cataclysm, yes, that rings very true to me. So I am fairly new to remote viewing. I've been trying to absorb what I can from you guys. I don't mean to be offensive. I come from a spiritual background. I how do I say this? I guess my question is specifically for magic. I have children. I have a family. Obviously, I love them dearly. Um, I'm a contractor. I am not an important person. I don't have money for a bunker. I don't have money to prepare or anything like that. Do you have any advice for it? It sounds so selfish to say for a good person, but I feel like I'm a good person. um, how would you respond to someone who walked up to you and said that to you?
Okay, so I'll jump in a little bit. Or David, David, you go ahead. Give your
Oh,
response.
and really quickly, by the way, I love your question, Dead Bird. I'm glad I brought you up here. Fringe, I know you need to dip out soon. Can you tell me like how much longer do I have you for? I'll keep on running the Q&A, but just let me know so you're not like missing.
I'm sorry to cut in here, but Fringe, I adore your posts. I read everything you put up. I think you're a wonderful person. So I just wanted to say that real quick.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that very much. And my advice before magic goes is get right with God, and I'm not even joking about that. My idea of God is probably not the idea of most people here, in the UFO in a UFO space, but I mean the actual true real God who I see as Yahweh of the Old Testament. So I just want to throw that out there as my own personal advice. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be trying to prepare and protect your children. I do all of those things as well. But when it comes to this cataclysm that might be coming our way, and we see even the earth splitting is in the prophecies, it's in scripture. So I would look to the scripture and look at those prophecies and kind of decide for yourself where you want to be when this whole thing comes crashing down, because I think it is going to come crashing down, and it very well may be in our lifetime. Um, let's say at least another 15 minutes, Ulrich, maybe a little bit longer, but I'd say by about 5:45 my time, and I have no idea what time zone I'm in right now, but that's about 15 or 20 more minutes.
Yeah, that's you must be in the central time, no, mountain time zone. If it's
I think it's mountain.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it. That sounds right.
Yeah, I'm here for the basic arithmetic, people. This is people come for the aliens and they stay for my basic arithmetic skills. So yeah, let Deadbird know if you need him to repeat his question. And Fringe, just say good night to us in about 20 minutes or whenever you need to dip out. And I'll be here to moderate the rest of the questions.
Yes, Deadbird, that's a very good question. It's a valid question. And I mirror Fringe's thinking on this topic. You know, I've had a lot of spiritual experiences and psychic experiences, which are to me are two different categories. But you know, I've known since I was very young that there were going to be major changes. Basically, I would live in two different worlds. I've never seen my source. What's my source? It's a gut feeling that comes in. Here's the thing that's interesting. Your gut feeling, somebody's looking at me from behind, right? Typically how you hear about a gut feeling, or maybe a simple decision like, ooh, I don't feel good about that decision, right? Very simplistic, right? But the truth of it is, in my opinion and experiences, is that you can draw upon that much more complex information. It's very like a fractal. It's very compressed. If you know how to do it, you can actually extrapolate a lot of information out of that. But this is something that I've been doing since I was a kid, essentially. So I kind of like figured out how to do this. And God would be the source, as is one way I could say it. But yeah, that I would live in two different worlds, and that there was going to be this period of time where it was going to be the in-between time, right? That would be the worst time, and we're already in that. In my opinion, we started around COVID is when we started to enter into that phase. Personally, that's my opinion, and also just for disclaimer, don't listen to anything I say, from a legal perspective. So I'll just throw that out there. But yeah, my there's two parts of this for me. I've always kind of done just more of a logical approach, right? If you break down natural disasters, earthquakes, fires, whatever, any possible thing that just reasonable, but just be reasonable about it, right? Things that might affect you directly. You kind of find that there's some common elements that end up across all the kind of categories, right? Filter for clean water, some amount of food storage, things of that nature, right? So you can kind of a person can kind of figure that out on their own, but that's one level of preparation. Is materialistic, and everybody has a range that they can do, right? Some very big, some very small. Some of it's just information, right? Have it like you can have no equipment and money and kind of go like, oh, I just knowing where water sources are might be important, right? Out in on the wilderness, right? So I'm just saying, like there are kind of like levels to that approach that you can take, which they don't have to be extreme. It could just be more self education, right? But the other part for me, at least directly, that's been extremely important is the pursuit of the spiritual development, like Fringe said, getting right with God. So meditation is an opportunity for you to start to move into a space where, in my opinion, you start to interact with the other part of yourself. The way again, there's different models, but I'm going to give you one model from my experiences. There's the human part of you, which is inside the simulation, and there's the other part of you that's not in the simulation. Both parts of you are real, but your ability to communicate with the other part that's outside the simulation, that is not necessarily as well understood or developed and things of that nature, right? But there are tools that can kind of help you start to move in that direction. So if you meditate more frequently and you pay attention, this is one of the things that's important. I'm an engineer, so I'm always looking at analysis and analytics and feedback, and I'm constantly kind of like refinement and improvement and optimization, right? Even within the psychic and spiritual space, because in my opinion, the reality is order. Order is structure. Structure has rules. Physics, psychic and spiritual also have rules if you can see them. And it's a huge, longer discussion about what I mean by that. But the point I'm trying to make for you is simply that I think what you'll find if you meditate and just sort of pay attention to what happens around you, you may start to make better choices. You might start to, for some reason, you end up in the right place at the right time. You're like, huh, that's a little bit weird. You could call it good luck. You could call it insight. Like sometimes you'll understand what you're doing. Sometimes it'll just seem like synchronicities, right? Notice if that kind of improves. So for me, I would say, and this is a very long discussion because I've gone I've meditated for 4 days straight. I have lots of understanding and experiences and even capabilities that I don't necessarily really want to talk about too much in a public space, but people have experienced them. And so for me, this pursuit has been more useful. It's more real in a lot of ways. Most citizens or public would not see it. They'd see it the opposite that I see it. So I'm trying to suggest, as somebody who might just be starting out, even something like meditation can end up changing your life or helping you out in a situation where you really need it for you and your family. To pay attention to your gut instinct, to try to cultivate these things. And there are tools, like remote viewing is a tool, is one tool out of many, but it can, through a structured approach for some people, it can help kind of get you more comfortable with that space if you've never experienced it. So like one of the things that people frequently who are in the new age or whatever, just a regular person, they're like, they've never had any spiritual psychic experiences. They like read about it like, wow, that sounds great. Right. Like that sounds amazing. But I've never had such a thing. Like, I don't know if that's true. Right. Well, interestingly, remote viewing is a teachable skill, and remote viewing is essentially applying science to psychic ability, which means in theory, and I've seen it work with a lot of people, so it should work, it should work in a general sense for everybody, is that if you follow it to a certain degree, you will start to experience proof of psi for yourself directly. That's what's important, direct experience. And once you have that experience, you gain confidence. And once you get confidence, you can move even faster. So that's kind of my little like answer to that question. I'll let Sasha answer.
Yeah, that's great. I agree with both Fringe and David that, you know, find your moral center and your connection to however you see God or source or, you know, the creator of this reality, the underlying consciousness field that you resonate to, right? So we might define it differently, but work on that connection. Did not meditate before I started remote viewing, and even now, I do more remote viewing than I don't meditate daily, and I find that I don't want to say I don't need to, but my experiences while I'm remote viewing are so much more profound that I think that's where I get a lot of that is happening that might otherwise happen when someone's meditating. I don't necessarily have I don't like to meditate, but I like to be in the flow state when I am remote viewing that's very similar to that. But I wanted to add something maybe more tangible. And I don't know if this is appropriate to say and we'll record it. So, but I'm just going to say it, put it out there. Make yourself valuable. You have time. Again, nobody knows when the bulk of this is going to happen. And we can say maybe 10 years, maybe, 2032, 2035. It might be 2042, or it might be 2027. Nobody quite knows. You have some time to prepare, but you don't have forever, is my impression. So I would say if you can be of value in a significant way to your community, to your neighbors, to your society, if you want a ticket to the bunker that the government has, then make yourself valuable to them. I think for me, I think, okay, by improving my remote viewing accuracy and precision, it hopefully gets me a ticket into the bunker because I can predict what's coming. I can tell you when it's coming. I can tell you where it's going to happen. I can give you details about it. I'm not just giving you a vague, oh, I think I saw this. I'm not just telling you what I believe. I'm actually going into the data stream and bringing data back from the data stream. And so that's how I guess I'm seeing myself as trying to be of value to the people who maybe will be able to protect me when things fall apart. So I think that would be something. But even just making yourself useful to your community, maybe as a community, you can come together and, at some point when things are maybe more clear, because I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I think you're going to see, like I said, when the stars start to fall, when the aurora are going off everywhere every night, that's when you need to start looking at your neighbors and saying, hey, what do you guys think about building a big hole in the ground in one of our backyards and putting some food down there, maybe some beds, maybe some Faraday shielding. So I think, yeah, as much as you can do to, and
Okay.
what do you have? Sorry, I was just gonna say, and then think about what you have to contribute to that community. Can you learn about healing plants in your locale where you live? Can you learn about what plants to use for medicine? Can you learn how to do woodworking that doesn't need power tools? Can you learn some skill? What do you think, Deadbird?
Okay, so something you said really hit me hard. I might start crying here, and if I do, I'll probably drop off. It's not you guys. Um, a lot of, and I'm not insulting love and lighters, okay? But a lot of them refer to this thing they call a Kundalini awakening. And I would not say I experienced anything like that, but I have led a hard life like we all have. I'm 40 years old. I have 4 children, 2 biologic. I've adopted a child. I have a child that stayed after a divorce. Um, I broke my back on a job site. I became addicted to hardcore drugs. I'm sober now, and I have been for a long time. But there was a point where I I for the first time in my life made a very, very, very sincere prayer to God, and the whole 9 yards, drop to your knees, crying, all of it, and I didn't feel anything at the moment, and I went to bed. And I should preface this real quickly with I've had nightmares, not nightmares, night terrors my entire life. I've had 2 sleep studies done. I've woken up outside 100 times as a child. Um, I was always being chased by monsters, various kinds of monsters. They evolved as I grew, and this could all be prosaic, of course. Um, but when I made that prayer, um, I think 38, and I was still screaming in my sleep. And when I say scream, I don't mean like I mean like if you've ever heard someone. I don't know if there's anybody who's been in combat here who's heard someone dying. It's that kind of screaming. My children had to get used to it. My spouses had to get used to it. Um, I've sought help for it. Nothing ever seemed to cut through. But the night that I made that prayer, I woke up with this odd blissful feeling. And I'm a contractor, like I said. I stepped out on my front porch and pre-dawn light, and sitting on the pillar in my gated front yard in my gated community was a copy of the New Testament. And as a logical person, I ran up and down the street and I checked every doorstep because I know all my neighbors. I love my neighbors. Because I was thinking some Bible thumper was passing out books, but nobody had one. So I go home and I open the book and I start reading. I hate to talk too much, but I opened it up and it opened straight to Revelations. And the thing that freaked me out about that was that it's written by this guy named John. And I know you guys all know this, but he was on this island named Patmos, which was the name of my dad's business throughout my childhood, which he never explained to me. My dad was a Jew. We were a non-secular household. So I go inside and I start reading Revelations, and my son comes out into the living room, and he, with a wide eyes, he says, "Dad, who was in your room last night?" And I had no recollection of it. He said, "You were talking all night long." And I, as much as I love my son, he's a middle schooler, and kids can be a little bit silly, and it wasn't until my daughter came out another 20 or 30 minutes later and said the exact same thing to me. I, again, had no recollection of any of the conversation. They were very clear that I did not scream, that I was talking, that I sounded peaceful and very engaged in the conversation. They were debating whether I was on the phone or if there was someone in the room. Clearly, there was not. And something in my heart, I know this sounds so corny and surreal. You have to remember, you're talking to a person who was a militant atheist for 30 some years. And I like I said, I radically changed my life. This is about a year before the drone showed up. And how do I say this? I realized that something was deeply connected to my dreams, and my screaming stopped post that event. And I haven't had an episode like that in years. Well, not in years, in a year and a half. But 2 weeks ago, I woke up in the middle of the night at the usual 3 to 4 a.m., like I think a lot of us have. And I don't journal. I should, but I clearly had this thought in my mind, not thought, but knowledge in my mind that I had been engaging with 6 different beings, and I don't remember anything they said to me, but I remember waking up feeling like I know this sounds so crazy, that you guys, you're demons, you're not good guys, as wild as that sounds, and the reason I'm saying all of this is because my life changed so radically. Like you suggested, you know, support your neighbors, love your people, reach out to people. That's what I started doing. I've become my best friend is my neighbor. He's a Vietnam vet. He's 80. I go sit with his wife. I don't say these things for ego. I say it because I love these people. Um, so after that dream with those beings, where they did say something to me, and I knew what it was when I woke up, but 20 minutes later, I forgot it, of course. And um, within 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 the week, my 16-year-old daughter was assaulted. And look, guys, I'd like to think I'm not a crazy person, but they don't. The assailant hasn't been captured. Uh, they perforated her lung. She's in the hospital right now. Um, and again, I know this could all be very, very prosaic, but when I think about this, and by the way, prognosis is good. They pulled out when they perforated her lung. Uh, they had to pull one of the hoses out to replace it, but things are looking very positive right now. So please don't, nobody get teary eyed or anything. But there's this deep feeling in my heart that somehow they're connected, and that really freaks me out.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's,
Hey, Deadwood, I just want you to know, Fringe didn't want to interrupt you while you were sharing, so she had to drop out, but she's still here with us as a listener, because this was her sort of bedtime. Yeah, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Sasha. I would love to respond to that after everybody else does. And Deadwood, I'm glad you came up to speak, and I regret being so harsh on you. I was assuming you were one of our usual UFO Twitter trolls, so forgive me.
You know what, Doom? I honestly owe you an opinion. I've been on here for about a year and a half. I switch titles a lot. I am a extremely emotional person. I'm extremely. My morals are sometimes off, and I don't think you realize this, but there was a point where I was harsh with you, and like I said, I'm sure you don't even remember it, but I do, and I apologize for that.
Oh, well, don't feel bad about it. I mean, respectfully, I'm certain I don't, because I get a lot of shit, and that's why I have a bit of a rough skin. You know, I was a Nazi for an entire week, and so was Fringe before we held the Giorgiani space. So I'm used to
Oh my
people
goodness,
attacking
I
me.
remember that. Yes.
Right? Yeah, I'm
Okay.
used to people attacking me, and so I just generally don't take any prisoners. So no guilt, no shame either way. But Sasha, I didn't mean to cut you off. And
No,
then,
I was just wanting to express compassion. Dreamer, why don't you go ahead and say what you're going to say?
well, I mean, I think questions like yours and stories like yours. What do you want me to call you, Dead Bird?
Oh, my name is is Jules.
Jules.
Anybody can call me Jules. Yeah, that's my given name.
Jules. You, you don't have to go into detail. Just help me understand what happened to your daughter.
So she was out with a group of young ladies, and someone accused someone of teenage type stuff. Um, and please, guys, don't make this a racist thing. Um, all we know right now is that they've arrested 3 perpetrators, but the ringleader was, and again, please don't, I'm not trying to insinuate anything here.
You're you're in a safe space, Dead Bird. What's up?
Okay. We're trying to find a tall, skinny black guy here in town. We have a feeling that a lot of people may know him, but that may not be true either. Um, everybody, I've reached out to everyone, all of her friends. Nobody can seem to identify him. I don't know if they're just like covering for him, but I'm talking to like there's one girl who's her best friend from life, and when she tells me, Jules, I don't know who he was, I believe her.
And I just want to understand what happened. Your daughter is how old?
She was 16. She was being assaulted. Um, when she started fighting back with her fists. She's a slight lady. She's what, 5'4". Um, we don't know what the object was, but he stabbed her about 4 or 5 inches below her what would be an Adam's apple on a guy, and it perforated her left lung.
He stabbed her in the neck, or like around the collarbone area?
Yeah, just below the clavicle.
That's horrible.
And you
Yeah.
know what's crazy? You know what's crazy about it is they left her in the street covered in blood. She was found by a detective who happened to be driving by, and if not for that, I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah. Jules, I'm incredibly sorry. And I I I think, first of all, I agree with you. There's a how long ago was this? When did this happen?
4 days ago, and I guess here's my big question, okay, guys, and I feel crazy asking this. Would it make sense to anyone in here that if someone who had been living a very sinful life came to God and found a lot of joy in that, would it would it be possible for the other side to affect the material world in a way to break down the person that found God, if that makes sense?
What do you mean, like, to break down? You mean to reach out and speak to them?
To be tested is what he's asking.
Yeah,
Um,
I think he gets it.
yeah,
Say that louder, David. What was the word you said?
to be tested. He's wondering if you have opposing teams, good, bad. You go to the good side, the bad side, then affects your to try to waver you on your decision. Essentially, I mean, it's really hard to say with that kind of thing. And I'm just talking about the good bad team perspective, right? It's really hard to know those kinds of things. But I do want to say I am really sorry about your daughter. That is horrible. Could they be, linked together or something? Is more of your question. I can't say, but I do know that there is.
Well, here's maybe a better way to put it.
Yeah.
With where again, I hesitate to speak for anyone else, but my viewpoint is that we're in some form of eschatology, whatever your faith may be, and the world's never been perfect. Okay, people get hurt, people get stabbed. I get it. Does it make sense to anyone else that if we were in those kind of times, that we might be seeing more violence, more hatred, more things like that
Yeah.
in the street?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. In my opinion, yes. Chaos, right, is going to be one of the markers in different forms. Yeah, absolutely.
Sasha, you're welcome to respond to that. And Jules, if you don't mind, I'd love to give you my response if you want to hear it.
Yeah, please, bro.
Yeah, I agree with David. So you can just go ahead, don't worry.
So one day I will. I'll explain what brought me exactly into UFO spaces, but it's not entirely different from the origin of your question. There was something that happened in my personal life that was so extraordinary that human psychology alone, what we understood, couldn't explain it. Meaning, yeah, it involved a crazy person, but it involved a bunch of other people. Sure, some were stupid, but some were at least of average or above average intelligence, and they had it's kind of like collective hysteria, and they were completely impervious to facts. So I dealt with a level of reputation destruction that to this day um, separate me from one of my two sons, and still produce hurdles uh, for me to get in contact with my oldest son, and have entirely alienated me from my entire extended family. And I still have recordings proving that everything that this person said were lies. So I have proof that they lied about everything. And this proof only increased the narcissistic injury of the entire extended family that took the wrong person's side. And it didn't matter. And so a lot of this can be explained with betrayal blindness, betrayal trauma, narcissistic elements that families have, even if no one person has full blown narcissism. But there was a level of it's in some ways it's like the UFO phenomenon where you have overwhelming evidence and certain scientists just can't understand the data or they don't want to accept it. And so you can explain some of these things through human psychology. You can say, like, oh no, they just can't handle the truth, or it's fear. You can even say there's epigenetic trauma. Seeing these discs in the skies likely happens right near the end of the world and right at the beginning of the world. And when I'm done giving you my answer, I'll push a few pages of the Chan Thomas book that describes the experiment they did on mice, where they shot them into space and gave some magnetic shielding and some didn't. And the solar radiation made the mice, the term they used was homicidal. And they didn't violate any mouse crimes because I don't think the legal code was written. But the mice that didn't have magnetic shielding were raping, eating other mice, killing other mice. And the ones that did, they were taking care of each other and grooming, and they were fine. And so the solar radiation, we already know the increase will definitively cause an increase in psychoticism, meaning delusion, but more importantly, psychopathy. And it will push everybody who's closer to the more labile ends of the psychological spectrum over the edge. And so, and you want to have some compassion and understanding, but those with personality disorders, those with borderline, those with narcissistic personality disorder, those afflicted already with psychopathy, antisocial, histrionic, these are the people who are going to face some of the hardest challenges, and they're going to be pushed over the edge first. But all of us are, I don't think I'm losing my emotional control, but I do know I'm having a harder and harder time just focusing on basic things, just adding two numbers together, or not, putting the windows on my computer screen in the right place. I'm having a harder and harder time. So even if you take morality out of it, you're going to have a moral effect. And I'm not a religious person. It was looking at financial markets indirectly, like through a huge trail of events. But I was never a catastrophist. I was one of those techno future optimistic people. Uh, I probably still am, but that doesn't mean I'm optimistic about negative things happening, and that doesn't mean I'm naive. And so I was never a doomer. I was never a catastrophist. I was somebody who most people would probably describe with a God complex, who believed with enough engineering you can solve every problem. Now, I do believe that the pole shift problem is an engineering problem, meaning that it just comes down to energy. And if you have enough energy, you have infinite energy, you have infinite money. You don't need to build housing for 8 billion people. You can just build all the robots that will build all the housing. I do believe that there are some people, I do know that there are some people who know when this is happening. And that's just one person saying that. But there are people who know when this is happening. And what you do, you're going to get a different answer. I think getting right with God is never a bad answer. I think you want to be right with yourself morally. Unfortunately, I think there's more at stake, and this is going to be the darkest view here. I think there's far more at stake than every single person's life on this planet. My personal belief is that this always happens every 6,000 years, and our souls get trapped and they get recycled into containers that are more easy for whoever's doing this to control, and that these containers are shittier and shittier with every cataclysm, with every reincarnation, and that we don't even have sovereignty over the destiny or the containers of our souls, or over the containers themselves that they get trapped in. And I am not here to fearmonger. I personally have decided to be here to anger monger. I want people angry, and I want people to broaden their imagination for the depth and the level of betrayal for what might be going on here. I think there's a level of a betrayal that might even transcend human sin. Humans have a lot of blood on our hands, and I don't think it exonerates people. So what happened to my family, even if there is some sort of NHI hijacking, I hold people accountable for following whatever voices they're following. But still, there is likely something that was steering human civilization constantly into war, constantly to lose technological innovations and have to reset. We've had 5,000 wars in the last 3,000 years. And despite all of our fuck ups, in just 6,000 years, we went from stone tools to FaceTime and shitty Xcode that sometimes won't even let you hold a space without it crashing. But we've been far too successful in 6,000 years, and far too unsuccessful for the last 200, 300, 400, 500,000 years. And we've also been far too successful at the dawn of civilization, meaning like, civilization started for us 6,000 years ago, right after a cataclysm. So we didn't have to hunt and pick berries for another 300,000 years right after the cataclysm. So something is coming down and helping us, and something is coming down and fucking with us all the time. And my personal
Well,
perspective is that there's a war, or our parents or something vying over us. And whether it's, opportunistic and those that help us are in it for themselves, or there's genuine actors, or both, I think everything is on the table, including God. I think God's on trial, and I'm going to be the person bold enough to say it. The question is which God, and the question is which gods are you following? And is there really a difference between God and NHI? Not according to the definition of NHI.
I mean,
And
it's semantics, isn't it?
it
It's
is, from my view, it is semantics. And so I'm a very spiritual person. I'm not religious, and most of our audience, I think, is Christian. I'm just ballparking, but I assume 70% of the people who tune into Doom Spaces are Christian. And I'm really proud of the fact that that Fringe and I disagree on some things, to prove the fact that you don't have to fight when you disagree, and that you can listen to a Doom Space and not pigeonhole us and be like, oh, these are eschatological doomers. But I think it's, to answer your question, what do you do for your family? You're going to get a different answer from everyone. You're going to get a different answer from me. I would say, make everybody aware that they're being betrayed, that the government is already not your government. It's already not your constitution. It's already hiding the end of the world for you. Your taxes are not your taxes. You're being taxed, and the government is using it to save the last 10,000, 20,000 people. I think everybody should know. And do I want to see the world burn? No. But if the world is burning, fuck yes, I want to see the world burn from the information. And I think the most powerful thing you can do is disclosure. I think disclosure is more powerful than an atom bomb. And in this case, when it comes to the pole shift, all you need to do is ask people, where is magnetic north? Because the CIA, NASA, ESA, nobody will tell you the most fundamental, basic part, the magnetic component of the Earth that you literally set your foot on. If somebody can't tell you where magnetic north is, the GPS coordinate of magnetic north, they're full of shit. And I think everybody right now, if everybody tagged NASA and asked where's magnetic north, we would have a revelation. And when you ask what is catastrophic disclosure, it's disclosure of the literal catastrophe, because that information would change the world. And if the world found out now, you would have 8 billion people who would mobilize, and they would be forced to accelerate a singularity technology and build provisional housing. We need about 7 days, and it just comes down to a kilojoule. It just comes down to energy. That's all. The difference between 8 billion people living and dying is an engineering fucking problem, and that's an informational problem. That's my
you
answer to get angry.
there's something that you said that again, I understand we come from very different uh, theological or spiritual backgrounds, but when you said that you feel like they've been uh, adjusting us over time, making us weaker or lesser or something like that, I do want to point out to you that in Scripture there is a very specific part where they're talking about war, and God's basically explaining that when I made man, he was a lot tougher, and he can't handle what we used to throw at him. And I always wondered what that meant. And you're the first person that said something that was like, well, that kind of I don't know, it just was interesting to me.
Yeah, and Sasha and David, I'm sorry for droning on so long. It's very rare that people are even willing to talk about the pole shift, and I'm happy you're here. And Jules, your question is at the heart of the matter. Like, what do? You have 8 billion people, and most of them have already been deselected. This is an uncomfortable conversation, and I think people should have it. I mean, we're talking about magnetism here, and it shouldn't be controversial. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't even be debatable. I mean, show us where the North Pole is, and why are we seeing all these aurora? And NASA prefers to lie instead. If I don't know if you've ever been on the NASA website and looked up stuff about the pole shift, but there's some absolutely insane things that they write. They say, oh, the the pole shift doesn't affect the climate because Earth's atmosphere isn't ferrous. There's no iron material in the atmosphere. That's coming from a NASA website. The stuff that NASA talks about is absolutely lobotomized, and it'll say, oh, you know, Earth's magnetosphere is absolutely vital for the protection of life on this planet, and they'll talk about how it protects the ozone integrity in the atmosphere. And then the next article written by the same person, it'll talk about how it's not going to affect climate at all. So anybody willing to talk about this is doing really important work.
Unfortunately, I do have to duck out of here. I followed a bunch of you. Don't feel obligated to do anything in return. Thank you guys very much. I will throw in one more little weirdness, and I'm sure you're all aware of it. I live on the Mexican border. We have been seeing the auroras down here. To see an aurora next to a saguaro cactus is something I have never seen in my 40 years. And nobody can explain, nobody can give me any good reason why that is suddenly happening now and it wasn't happening 10 years ago. So yeah, I think you're onto something. I'll look for your spaces. God bless you guys all. And thank you for listening to me. And it really did help me. I haven't shared that stuff with anybody except for my family. So sometimes talking to strangers does help. So thank you guys.
Thanks for trusting us, man.
Yeah, I hope your daughter gets better quickly.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Sasha and David, I don't.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump in. You mentioned the mice exposed to lower magnetic fields, and I just wanted to say, if by synchronicity, I was actually looking at that study last night. When they do expose mice to differing magnetic fields, that they did see an increase in violence and, like you said, cannibalism, all kinds of behavior. And so the idea that we might start seeing some of that as the magnetic field decreases, I think, yes, I would agree with you on that. And then you mentioned in passing the harvest. We have a video on our channel. I made a playlist and I put it at the top. So if you go to our YouTube channel, Magic in the Noise, remote viewing, it's the first playlist on our landing page. So that's specifically about the pole shift. And we have more videos coming out soon because I have another recording that I just have to chop up in ways that make sense so that we can release them so that it's not an hour long. It's just little bits. But in one of them, the coming pole shift harvest of souls, just because you mentioned the harvest, I just wanted to say that, yeah, I did get in my data that as well, that I saw solar gates when the solar gates open, and they don't open often. And now after I had done my session, I was doing the analysis. Remember that in the book of Enoch, he talks about these solar gates that open and close. I kind of got something similar in my data where I had the sense of there's timing involved, and some of the souls get set free, or some of the people who can maintain that coherence. It's not just that they survive, but some of them get set free instead of just being dissipated out, or the data just being stored, archived, and then a fresh new set of records is initiated. So I just wanted to add that because it's relevant to what you mentioned.
So glad you did. Do you have any sense of like where those gates are? Like, it's such a weird question. Do you get what I'm trying to ask you? Like where?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that they have to do with frequency, and I think it has something to do with the sun. And so what I understand from it as analysis, right, looking at the data that I got while I was in the session, the sun is changing, and something happens in the sun, and that's really, I think, what tips the scales. And whatever it is, whether it's a change in frequency, whether it's that this sun kind of, I don't know, the magnetic field of the sun changes such that like in the past, it looks to me like it was Saturn that was the sun. And then somehow it's no longer the sun. Now in our era, we have the Sol star as our sun, and Saturn, we call it a planet, a gassy giant, but it was the old sun. And so I didn't see how the transition happens. So I can't say how the transition will happen from our sun to the next one, but I do firmly believe that that's what the data was pointing to. And in the in-between, between the current Akashic records being archived and stored, put away, and the new set of records initiated, between our current sun and the new sun, between the old Schumann resonance and the new one, there's an opening there where, and I think it has to do with the data stored in the Akashic records, but there's an opportunity for some, I don't know if the word souls carries too much baggage, but let's just use it for the sake of conversation. Some souls who have that coherence, who have their data, they seem to be able to exit this system, whether it's exit the simulation, somehow intact. And there's something about that felt very important, but there's also a lot about it that I felt like was more for me, not as much for me to share. So I talked about it maybe a little bit more vaguely. I did do a different session for a different tasker, and more information came through about some of how that works. And I just want to say, I don't know if it's an appropriate place to say it here, but for the people who worship Saturn, who are still trying to embed their data into the Saturn field, into the Saturn records, you're being deceived, is what I saw. That's a deception. And that information is not being uploaded to the more universal field. So yeah, in terms of, sorry, to answer your question more directly, I think it has to do with frequency, the solar gates, and coherence. So
that's interesting. Do you have any idea when the timing is? Do you think it's when the magnetic shielding like falls more? Do you think it's like right before the crust unlocks?
So it's hard. I saw the stars falling. I saw the constellations shift as though the axis of the Earth has spin, or the axis of the ether above us changes, or depending on what model you ascribe to. If you think it's the stars that are moving above us, then the stars slip. If you think it's the planet that's rotating, then the axis shifts. But for whatever reason, what we see in the sky changes. The angle of the constellations changes. That's one thing. The Earth tears open. That's another thing.
Well, I mean,
the magnetic field starts to go crazy and realign to different poles. All these things are going to start happening. The aurora borealis are going to be seen everywhere, or at significantly lower latitudes. We're already seeing that. So I think the process has begun. But in terms of like, when is the moment to exit from the solar gates, I'm going to need to be retasked so I can get more information. And like I said, because I did the session 2 years ago, I'm a much better remote viewer now, so I should be able to get more specific information about that. But the thing is, I need to be blind. So I can't just say to David, okay, task you with that sometime this week, or even sometime in the next 3 weeks, because if I'm only doing 2 sessions, or God forbid, 1 session, and the next, or 1 target, not session, but target, then I can't know that the next one he gives me is this one, right? And I think that that's something that I see a lot of groups do that I strongly disapprove of. You know, something happens in the news and it's a big event, and then everybody works that target. Well, you're not blind. Like, I remember the Titan submersible that imploded, and then every single remote viewing group or channel or they were all tasking each other with that. Well, if you're working a target, and that's been in the news all week, and you start getting data about, oh, I feel like I'm underwater, I feel some kind of an implosion, right away you're unblinded. Now you know exactly what you're describing. So I don't think it's good to task remote viewers with what's happening in the news right now. And I also don't think I can be retasked on this particular session this month, because I'll know that that's what it is. And so then, even if I do my best, our subconscious, people can say, oh, I don't put in my own beliefs. But the thing is, your subconscious affects how the data is expressed to your conscious awareness prior to your conscious awareness being aware of the data. So it kind of goes through a filter. That's why we often get metaphors that speak to us, that make sense to us. Or sometimes we see movie scenes. Oh, it reminds me of this scene in the movie. Because the data stream says, look, I have this chunk of data. It's not encoded for human minds. It's not encoded in human language. But you're here and you're wanting to access it. And so how can I translate this into something human for you. One of the things it does is it rifles through your memories and says, is there anything in there that's useful that we can kind of, it's close enough to what I'm trying to communicate to you? Oh, I see you have a memory here of this movie that you saw. This scene is kind of close to what the information I have is. So that I'll trigger that. That should give you a sense of what I'm talking about. Or right, like, or here's a memory of when you were 6 years old and you fell off your cherry red bike. Okay, that's close enough to the main gestalt of what I want to communicate to you. And the data stream, you know, what we're interacting with, it's not us, and it doesn't think like, or the data isn't organized in a human way. So even the idea of truth, people get really confused about that. The data is not stored in the data stream as this is true and this is not true, because humans don't even know what's true and not true. I always use this same example because I think it puts the point forward concisely. The humans knew the diameter of the proton for decades. They knew the precise value. If you had remote viewed a proton and you had remote viewed the exact diameter of it, and you had gotten that truth, the true number, 15 years later, you would have been proven wrong, because 15 years later, they had better equipment and they found out that their measurement of the diameter of the proton was wrong by orders of magnitude, 150 times wrong, not plus 150 or minus, but like 150 times the order of magnitude. So what we consider true changes. Can a man get pregnant? Some people think that that's true right now. Some people think that that's not true right now. So if you're asking the data stream to tell you the truth about something, or if, right, like truth is, there are some truths, there are absolute truths, and those are encoded in the data stream, but there's a lot that we consider true that isn't. It's just convenient. You know, we were talking earlier about the model of why Earth has a magnetic field and the theories about convection currents in liquid iron, that we know that heated liquid iron can't hold a magnetic or a magnetic charge. It can't induce a magnetic field, but we still accept the theory because it's useful. So again, it's just that idea of remote viewing gives you data about the target, but it doesn't give you truth. And it's always being kind of parsed through your subconscious and your personality even. So people who think that they can somehow screen out every aspect of their personality when they're doing a remote viewing target that's not blind, I don't believe that that's possible, because your subconscious is shaping the data on its way to your conscious awareness. By the time it hits your conscious awareness, it's already been shaped by your personality. David, what would you say about that?
Yeah. Yes. I'm trying to think of how to contribute to that. The things that you haven't already said. So yeah, I mean, essentially,
We
it
also
depends. You
have,
know, people's.
we also have, yeah, I'm not going to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
David. No, we also have two people on stage with, I think, that might have questions. We have Intuitive Mind and Victor.
Yeah, let's go to
Oh
that.
yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Intuitive Mind, welcome. You're going to be, sorry, Intuitive Underground. I think you're going to be joining us for the next space. Welcome.
Thank you. David, Sasha, everyone here. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for your time. You know, in the middle of a crypto meltdown, or even just trying to protect your nest egg, I can understand.
Thank you.
Everyone else that's spending their time, you know, it seems like we're approaching a great awakening, or we're already in the middle of it, really, to be honest. It's probably been going on for decades and we just haven't quite put one and two together. But these sorts of things do need to be talked about, and they need to be put out there. In my own personal experience of remote viewing, we match on a fair amount of data of what you've been talking about this afternoon. Some stuff that's been told to me, I've seen some of the work, I haven't seen all of it, but a lot of it jives. Even our own work that we'll be talking about next week, a lot of what we talk about is going to jive with what you guys have presented today. And thanks for coming out and talking about it. You know, in this community of remote viewers, there's a lot of infighting, there's a lot of positioning, there's a lot of egos. And, even just coming out and just talking about raw data across the board, if we could all just get together and just work together instead of worrying about, who's the next preceder of this particular protocol or that particular protocol, or who's going to be the next hotness when it comes to, new methodologies and that sort of thing. If we all just kind of work together, we could really suss out a vast quantity of information, much like the topic we're talking about today. I do have some information to share when it comes to that, but I don't want to take over the space. So I really I'm glad my partner Morgan is here. He's my business associate. We've been remote viewing for about 13 years now, and like me, probably more than me, he's very much a remote viewing nerd when it comes down to technicalities and what comes from where and who's doing this or who's doing that. And listening to the call most this afternoon, where I'm at, and at first it sounded a lot like ERV, and then you guys mentioned some HRVG, and it sounds like maybe perhaps you guys have roots in CRV. First question is basically, did you learn this or did you guys develop it yourselves? Is there a monitor required? And then a follow-up is after that, I guess.
And do you mind just breaking down those acronyms really briefly for everybody?
Oh, sure. Extended remote viewing is more or less the first methodology that they started working on with in SRI. Morgan would be able to fill you in on all the proper details. Unfortunately, I don't really remember who did what, when, and where. But generally, it's an altered state. It's a more active remote viewing where you're actually going out, and as I understand it, there's a lot more visualness to it, a lot more experientialness to the ERV. It doesn't really. How do I want to say this? Because I'm sure there's definitely some protocols. I don't know enough about ERV personally. It's something I'd like to rectify one day and go visit with Joe. But as I understand it, it's not sitting at a desk with some paper and recording what data stream would come through your mind. CRV is more of a controlled. It's also experiential, but it's more passive than ERV. Bilocation is preferred, but staying at strictly 50-50 sort of thing, a foot in this world and a foot in that world, and recording data as it comes to you. And then some of the offshoots, like technical remote viewing, is more of a stream of consciousness sort of situation where you're actually just sitting at a desk recording down impressions as they come in, and then you just analyze the data. So HRVG is more foreign to me. We do have one guy that works in our group that has had formal training in that. It seems to be a lot more visual immediately. It does seem to be a little bit different in some respects. It tends to be a lot more visual. I'm not 100% sure on the protocol across the board. It's not something that I've really invested too much time in, but it seems to be like a hodgepodge of several different types of protocols into a different way of attacking a target, as I understand it.
Yeah, great question. So, and great summary on that. For me personally, in the late 90s, early 2000s, under Ed Dames, I got training. And then around, I think, 2021, I got training in HRVG. Most of the protocols that are in the public sector are derivatives of CRV. CRV is the kind of the second, because you had mentioned ERV. So for the public, I'm kind of saying like CRV is sort of the second thing that they created through the Stargate program. ERV was the first. And HRVG, as you mentioned, is a different animal, right? It's meaning like if I look at the categories, typically you kind of have HRVG is, because I've been trained under it, is to me is very different in the way that they're kind of approaching it versus the general public CRV derivative kind of model. And also ERV is different than that too, but ERV is typically not used as much as CRV is in the public space. So so I got training in those methods, and I moved beyond them, but I still have a set of protocols that I use. So for me, the visuals, CRV does not stress direct visual perception. They want you to do more indirect automatic writing. It's right in the manuals. They talk about not looking for the visuals and to focus 100% on the automatic writing aspect. And that's because the model that CRV used a different model. They used a model of a bit level model, information systems, and their goal was to essentially try to increase signal out of the noise. And the way that they approached that was from a bit perspective. So, you know, it makes sense. Like their way of doing it is they're actually following an actual specific model, and that model, the whole goal is to produce a refined output that's more, you know, signal heavy versus noise heavy. So that totally makes sense. But HRVG uses different tools. It's not just one tool, but one of them is that you do look directly at the target. For me, I have the ability to observe my mind in real time, which means I can decode. I'm also an engineer, which means I can reverse engineer things that are occurring in that process, right? So I got really familiar with HRVG. I was, you know, it was a very useful tool. TRV was also useful, but in different kind of ways. But the direct visual perception was a big deal for me. And then I started to move beyond it. So I started to see, and I'm sure other remote viewers get really like spend a lot of time on this rather than just a hobby. They probably go through a similar pattern, is my guess. But over time, I started to realize like, hey, the protocols are important. Like the steps, you know, to keep your mind from wandering and injecting more noise. It's very important to have some structure to your process 100%. And ERV was probably the least restrictive, definitely much less restrictive than CRV. ERV was more laying back, trying to get in an out of body state. They actually wanted to see visuals, but looking through the manuals, I see no specific protocols for it. It was more, they went through the gateway method, hemisync. You know, they had a different kind of perspective on how to do this, and it was less protocol heavy. They had some, but I'm just saying like nowhere near what CRV does. So anyways, so my perspective on this is that over time I realized like the protocols become a restriction. So, and I'll give you an example of this. If I'm forced to put a piece of information into a space that's confined, but I'm receiving it because my capability now, like my own internal skill set and observant, like I'm observing the signal, right? Through development, right? I'm getting better at that. Just personally, I understand things much better, right? What if I get what if I get a download of information? What if I get like 6 pages of information compressed into like a single point, right? But I have access to the information, but I'm looking I'm looking at a tiny space that I'm supposed to fill up, right? And I'm like, but I have 6 pages. Like I literally, and we're not talking about imagination. We're talking about like just pure signal stuff. It's just like, it's like a download. It's hard to explain until you experience it, but it's like, well, what do you do with that? Do you just throw some of it away? Do you just follow the protocol and be like, well, I guess I'll approximate that into a 20% or 5% kind of space, right? So I realized over time, like, no, that's bad. Like in the beginning, it's good to have sort of confinement in order to keep somebody whose mind is kind of wandering. It helps to focus, right? 100% makes sense to kind of provide that. But then there's a point where that actually becomes like a prison for the process, and you have to kind of understand when you need to let go. So long-winded discussion to try to say that for me, I've moved beyond both those systems, but I still am using a protocol process, but it's through reverse engineering what's worked for me, and through a science perspective, I'm also looking at science research that backs up my understanding of what I'm decoding through this process. So it's I don't know how to explain it. It's just a new kind of thing that it's kind of like a new model is the way I would describe it. And I'll let Sasha answer. Sorry, hope I didn't take too much time.
No, that was good, David. Thank you. So for me, I was trained in CRV, which is controlled remote viewing, which is a very rigid protocol. It's more about sensory, how you're, what data are you feeling, what impressions are you getting. And that was through Paul Elder. He's like the Monroe Institute for Canada instructor. And then after that, I went and learned HRVG, which is the Hawaiian Remote Viewing Guild or Group's remote viewing method. And like David mentioned, that one is primarily based in visuals. Look for the data. What do you see? Describe what you see, and then go through your sensory input as well. And because of, even though I have aphantasia, I can still, like I said earlier, I can still decode visual data. I understand that it's visual data, even though I don't experience it visually. And so I can still get the conceptual meaning and describe it in visual terms, draw it in visual terms. And then I found that as I'm drawing, the automatic writing does help. It encodes more information into my sketch. But I have synesthesia, and so I get a lot of concepts that are quite complex as taste. When I focus on what does this taste like, I get complex concepts, and there was no room for that in the HRVG protocol. And in their stage where you're supposed to, get a flash of, oh, how is this coming together? I would have all these words and all this language and all this information that was coming through me that there was no room for it. And so I walked away, started Mint, Magic in the Noise with David, and just working with David, we had a couple of really good remote viewers as friends that we had met either in HRVG or on Facebook in some of the groups there. And we were doing these weekly practices together. And I would recommend that to any remote viewer. Get a group of people who are on your level of ability or slightly higher and work together every week, do targets, because you learn so much from them, from talking with them about your results and just kind of establishing like, oh, what's working and what isn't. And it's really, really helpful. And so from that process, I improved and started developing my own style. And then David and I, we research things. We're both very similar, curious. We like to break things down, try to figure out how it works, very highly analytical. And so we were trying to figure out, how does this thing work that we're doing, remote viewing? How does this ability to apply our psychic ability, what's going on and how can we do it better, right? And so through those conversations, through that work, and through my own process of just trying to figure out what works for me as someone with aphantasia, as someone with synesthesia, I can't rely on these protocols that were developed for military men who don't have aphantasia, who don't have synesthesia, and whose main targets are describe the military base, tell me where the guys with the guns are, where are the dogs, and where's the entrance point. Those aren't the kind of targets that I'm working. I'm working targets like the pole shift. And so I started to shift how I was working. So this session that I did on the pole shift 2 years ago, I was still borrowing the basic format of the Hawaiian Remote Viewing Guild's remote viewing protocol, but I wasn't following the protocol. And so you can see in my taste column, I'm talking about all these concepts. I'm having visuals in my taste because like I said, visuals for me are conceptual. And so, and then when I'm supposed to have my flashes, I'm just writing and I'm seeing these things. When I talked about a download, the data was pouring through me. So it feels nearly like water rushing through you onto the page. And even at that point, I was getting that on some of these targets. This one in particular was really, really vivid. And so then from that experience and having that happen again on other sessions, I developed my own system. I call it full spectrum illumination because it's full spectrum. It's not just the visible light spectrum. We're going beyond that. And it's illumination because to me that fits more with what it is that I'm doing. I'm going into the light and I'm joining in with the light and I'm having an exchange with it. And so that's what I call it. It works for me. And I've taught 3 other people at this point. All like a more advanced, the more advanced version of it. They 2 of them had already had some training in remote viewing. One just was doing freeform, and they're having incredible results with it. So it really, really works, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited to share that with people. So that's what I do now, full spectrum illumination. I'm going to put some of my pages up from my pole shift sessions so that people can collect more data and maybe ask more pointed questions. I don't want to put all of it up. I don't want interference or contamination, but I will put some. And also there's some things that are more for me than for the public. But you'll be able to see what I hope this shift, you'll be able to see in that session how my protocol was changing. You can see the bare bones of the HRVG method of remote viewing, but then you can see that on top of those bare bones, there's the Sasha protocol that's kicked in, and I've developed that further into FSI and let go of HRVG. But I still have, a good relationship with Glenn Wheaton, who's the founder of HRVG, and we're still in talks with him about different things and opportunities and ways to push remote viewing forward. Because one of the things that I value, like David mentioned about HRVG, the Hawaiian remote viewing, is it focuses on visual data, on visual experiences of the data. And I think that that's important. And so that's my story. Does that answer the question? Or go ahead, David.
And just one more point, because one of the things that was brought up in the question was, or just sort of a summary, was the idea how more remote viewers across the community in terms of their data correlating, right? Pole shift, multiple groups working on the pole shift. This is one of the things that, Sasha and I have kind of talked about, some of the stuff where it's difficult. Some of these groups are closed. And again, there's no judgment because sometimes it makes sense or whatever, but I'm just saying, like, there are times when you can't necessarily get access to that very easily, or even if they're public, you don't necessarily know where these people are or where the information's stored. But the idea of all of a sudden, Sasha runs a poll shift, and then we find out, like, oh geez, these other 6 people did it too. And we can look at the collective of the data. You can start to see the correlations between the information, provide a broader picture. So this is one of the things that, because we're in this, if it was the military, it'd be different, but because we're in the civilian space, it's very kind of chaotic, and there's probably data that's lost or knowledge that's lost that simply because of this, disharmony, essentially, that it's not necessarily, like I said, there can be logical reasons for it. It's just, it happens.
Well, thank you. It definitely helps out. I find myself in the same spot in which I'm trying to grow past the protocols that I've been working for the last 10, 13 years. I spent some time with Paul Smith a few weeks ago, and I thought maybe perhaps that a lot of it was just stage 1 decoding in the way in which I learned it from Ed, and then the ways in which I've learned from Paul that I might find it. But it seems as if there's another direction I need to start taking it in. One last thing with the nerd talk, and then we'll get back to the doom, I suppose, or whatever else anybody else wants to talk about. I guess it's a 2-point question. It's the idea of moving from theta to alpha or to gamma. And I'm curious as how is that working, and whether or not that is a sign of spiritual progression, so to speak, if you understand what I mean by that.
Yeah, so like I said a little bit earlier, so there's the delta brain waves, that's 0 to 4 hertz. And a lot of binaural beats tend to try to enhance your 4 hertz frequency. This is related to like your flow states. That's the correlation that's been found when that brainwave is a little bit stronger, that rhythm. And then the theta, that's 4 to 8 hertz. So this is where you're starting to overlap with the Schumann resonance. This is the sleepy, dreamy state.
I must have.
Oh. Oh no, we can still hear you. Oh, he's back to listener. So the theta state is the dreamy state, it's the creative state, and that's the one that a lot of people listen to tone entrainment audio tracks when they're remote viewing to try to get into theta. That's like just on the edge of sleep. That's not what I do. I like to be hyper alert. And I find that I need to be hyper alert to get the downloads. If I'm on the verge of sleep, then I'm too tired to understand, to ask the right questions. It's not the right state for me. And I do wonder why that one's pushed so hard on the public to get into the theta state. And then the alpha state, 8 to 12 hertz. This is when you're awake and you're alert. And I think for me, this is a really good
And
brainwave state to be in.
Sasha, there's about 15 seconds of like time missing when you bring somebody up from listener to speaker. So you might need to recap a little bit of that. We have Dan back.
Oh, oops. Okay. Okay, so basically I'm just running down delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma, different brainwave states. They have different frequencies, and some remote viewing methods try to push one brainwave state more than others. So the theta one is the most popular, I suppose, the 4 to 8 hertz. And like I said earlier, I think it's not, I think they're misunderstanding why they get good results in that theta range. I don't think it's because you're in that sleepy creative state. I think it's because you're in a state that overlaps with the Schumann frequency peak. And that's why you're getting that resonance with the Akashic records, let's say, the field in which those are kept. And so I think that's why that's a good state for people. But the alpha state also maps onto that, because alpha is also in the 8 hertz range. And so you can choose to go the theta route or the alpha route. And then the gamma waves, that's 30 to 100 hertz. And again, the Schumann resonance has these overtones. And we always talk about the first 2 or 3, and they always mention that the first one is the strongest at 7.83, and then they get progressively weaker. But what they don't say is that at the other end, there's a huge, strong peak. And I have to double check this, but I think it's in the gamma range, the upper range of gamma. And that's coincidentally the brainwave state that master meditators get into when they hit that feeling of unity. So there's something about that. Go ahead.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I'll quickly add my perspective on this. I haven't done any brainwave. I haven't used an EEG as an example to track what's going on, and I probably should. I've thought about it a bunch of times. Buying an actual, like, a very expensive scientific piece of equipment, right? But I would say, like Sasha said, she's in a very functional state when she's pulling information. She's definitely not in theta, is what she said. She's more in something like alpha, right? I would say the same thing, is I'm hyper focused. But the other thing that I will say, and again, in the absence of actual data to prove it, is that there's something called the Gans flicker. The Gans flicker is one of the ways in which you can perceive visuals directly. I'm not necessarily endorsing this or recommending it. I'm just sharing my experience that this is, and scientifically, you can see papers on this. Gans-Feld is a secondary way, right? But Gans flicker is where your eyes are overstimulated, so you receive flashes. And one of the things that I've found is that there's a point, if you can reach it, there's a point where the flickering becomes solid. And when it becomes solid, I have more often than not experienced either movies or bilocation. And I'm not saying it happens all the time. I'm saying that the frequency is more through that mechanic, but it happens in this different state. So most people would just experience the flickering, and you can experience visuals that way, but there's a deeper state. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that I believe probably if I had an EEG on my head, you would find that my brain is starting to move faster, or that my consciousness or mental focus is shifting into a higher speed of operation. And that this is why visually I perceive the light going from a rapid flickering rate to a solid light, essentially. So I'm just kind of reiterating, my perspective is that hyper awareness is important, and that probably the faster your mind can move, you're likely to get more volume of data. It would be my guess. At least that's my experiences.
also wanted to add for Intuitive Underground, because you asked about this. This session was not monitored. So for people who don't know, in remote viewing, you can have a monitor, which is someone who asks you questions. Because, and this does happen to me, I get so deep in a certain state, I'm so immersed in the data that I'm in a receptive state. The data is flowing through me. It's really hard when you're in a receptive state to come up with questions, to think rationally, to, right? You're receiving data, and then you have to kind of switch into what's a good question to ask. And so having a monitor is to have someone that comes in and says, okay, well, tell me more about that. Okay, well, if you move, what do you see beside that? Or, right now, the bad way of doing it, which is when you have a monitor who doesn't really know what they're doing, and they ask you questions to confirm, oh, is it blue? Oh, is it red? Oh, do you see a church beside it? They're leading you. Or they think that they know what the target is, or maybe they do know what the target is, and they want you to confirm that belief. So they try to help you subconsciously by asking you leading questions, right? And so that tends to add corruption into the data. And you can usually tell when a session's been done that way, because again, there's the data is not as organic. And so in this session, I didn't do any monitoring. So I had to immerse myself, get the download, and then come back up enough to say, okay, what question should I ask? What do I need to know? What do I need to record? But I was lucky enough, and that's, when you get kind of these download situations, the data stream decides for you. Like, you don't even have to ask questions. It just keeps pushing data through you. And so that's a really nice state to be in. And I try to be in that state more often. There's some things that you can do that I teach in my training to help get into that state. But Dave and I, we have done a couple of monitored sessions, and it can be useful if your monitor is really good, because all you really need is someone to just ask. So if you say, I see the earth tearing apart. Okay, where? What is happening? What's the consequence of that? Can you tell me more? Can you see more? Right? Instead of saying, oh, are there people there? Oh, are they brown or are they white? Oh, are they speaking English or another language? Right? That would be bad monitoring, because then you're injecting data into the mind of the viewer and you're confusing them or you're biasing them. But if you have a monitor who's basically just basically saying, tell me more, that can help if you're deep enough in the state. But I think the vast majority of remote viewers are not at the level yet where they're getting anywhere near the kind of state that requires a monitor. I think most remote viewers at the moment are, for various reasons, I think that there's really a strong effort to prevent remote viewers from getting really good, because the militaries, it's not in their best interest to have civilians walking around who can read files or see all their secrets. So there is a concerted effort, I think, to kind of pin down our abilities. But I think most remote viewers, you don't need a monitor. Just do it yourself. Figure out for yourself, okay, if I'm getting this, then tell me more about this, or show me more about this, right? That's a better way. But at some point, and this gets into what David is talking about, right? Your mind starts to work in a different way, and you're separating out from your physical body, and that's where it can help. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Maybe we can go to the next question.
Yeah, thank you, Sasha and David. Bigfoot has been patiently waiting. I don't have anybody else in the queue. If somebody does pop up, please raise your digital hand.
Sorry for the echo. 1 second.
All right, I hope the echo's gone. But we will. I hope as soon as I have my life a little bit more grounded and billion-dollar meme coins are not crashing the day I'm in a space, we'll hit people hard with more pole shift spaces coming up, because I think it's really necessary. So this is I don't see anybody else in the queue right now. And Bigfoot, welcome to the space. What's your question for Sasha and David?
Hey, thanks for bringing me up. I've got a few questions for them. The first thing I'll bring up is probably going to be more on the doomer side, And then the second thing is going to be a lot more hopeful. And then maybe a couple other things. I just had to kind of respond because Sasha was saying some things that really resonated with me on some dreams or visions that I've had. One was when I was a child. I had this dream or vision or whatever you want to call it, where the earth was on fire, and there were these two people just sitting there, and and they were like cannibalizing each other, just pulling each other's faces off and eating them. And I got pretty scared and I ran, and there was this crack in a mountain, and I somehow jumped down in that crack. And when I jumped down in there, there was a white rabbit inside of the mountain, and somehow I was protected from what was going on outside. And so that really kind of seems like it's like what she's talking about, where the radiation is going to get pretty bad with all these solar events. And then the next one was pretty recent. Within this year, I had another vision where she was talking about solar gates, and I sort of believe that there's a universe inside of all of us as well as a universe outside of all of us. And I think that without thinking that I'm God, which I know that I'm not God. I'm not a person who thinks that they're God, but it's more like a kind of how it explains it in the Kabbalion, like all is in the all. And anyway, the sun came down to me. So all this, of course, is going on inside of my mind, and it opened up, and these orbs spilled out of the sun, and each one of these orbs was singing and kind of had like a little face on it. And it was like the most beautiful experience I ever had in my life. It was the most beautiful music I had ever experienced in my life, and I had never felt anything like that um, before or since, and I don't know that I ever will. And as far as like a solar gate, that kind of seems like a solar gate to me. And it's like everybody's talking about how to prepare for something like this. Well, maybe that gate is inside of you. And I think we all have that gate. And I think that we can all get there. And I don't know, I'd like to know what Sasha thinks about that. I've had a little bit of experience with remote viewing. I think one time I gave up to this guy. There was like an olive green door on the ground, and there was a big military dude there, and uh, I thought it was like the door to underground military base, and he's like, "There's nothing in there. There's never been anything in there." And then I woke up, and another time I tried to get into Antarctica, and about 5 dudes bounced me out of there pretty quick. And I don't know. And another time I went out of my body, and then there was this blue, like demon looking thing with a ram's head standing next to my bed, and I didn't get very far. So I don't know. But the remote viewing is really cool. I'd like to get a lot better at it. But the main thing is, that. Oh, and then Mount Kalash. There's a dude saying Mount Kalash will be where the pole shift ends up, and that's supposed to be like a big spiritual energy place. I think across several different cultures are kind of pinpointing Mount Kalash. I don't know if anybody's got any ideas on that either. But the main thing is like those spheres that came out of the sun. If this does happen, if that we are going to experience this, um, I think that might be the way out. So I would say, I mean, for me, I think it might be. I mean, if you don't have your bunker prepared or whatever, I mean, if you experience that, I don't know. I'd really like to just see what Sasha had to say about it, because it sounded so familiar to what she was saying. A couple of those things.
And thank you for respecting doomer etiquette and bringing cannibalism to balance the flavor of the positivity. That's I appreciated that, Bigfoot. When you answer, Sasha, can you clarify whether the solar gates? I think you mentioned them in the connection to soul harvest, right? So I don't know if the solar gate thing was positive. I assume it was some sort of vortex meant here to suck up our souls when everyone dies, but that might have just been my doomer projection. And we have the Messy Messiah got brought up. Just raise your hand, Messy Messiah, and we'll get to you after Bigfoot asks his questions.
Yeah, so can you just summarize, like, just in particular, what you're wanting me to respond to? So in terms of the solar gates, in your experience?
Well, the solar gate, is your understanding that it's like a soul harvest, that it's there to suck up souls, or is it like a portal where other things are coming through? I might have had the wrong understanding.
Yeah, so no, so for me, what I saw was that there is timing involved in this, and that in between the opening of the solar gates, in the eras between the opening of the solar gates, there's no exit. And then at these particular times when these polar flips occur, when the magnetic field collapses, when the Akashic records are reset, maybe when the sun is maybe a new sun, I guess, takes its place, something happens such that there's an exit point. And so you can exit if you can hold on to your coherence, your individuality, I suppose, your record set, your data, and exit the system and exist beyond it. And this is the time. And if you don't, again, I'm not sure about saying this on a recorded space, but I'll try it and we'll see what comes of this if I end up being punished for saying this. But if you don't, then what I saw was your data gets stored in the Akashic records, however you want to call that. You know, people have different names for it. I'm just using Akashic records because that's the one a lot of people know, but other people might have different terms that maps onto the same thing. But if you don't exit, then your data gets archived into the Akashic records, but those records get kind of closed. So they're still, like I said, I was able to access the records before ours, but it hurt to do it. It really hurt my heart, my chest. But once those records are closed, then what I saw was it's reset. Everything is reset, and everyone is reset. And so all the data is essentially removed. It's like what I saw was like a computer disk being degaussed. Everything is erased, deleted, and started fresh. And I think that the people who don't take the exit point when it's offered, they dissolve. That's not, I mean, this is a doomer space.
Whoa,
this is a space to say things like this.
Do you mean our souls get deleted, or the memory of our past lives gets purged?
I think it's more that you dissolve into source. You dissolve into
that might be the greatest, most diplomatic euphemism for you get annihilated and you're a mortal soul as well.
I mean, this is just your understanding. But am I understanding you correctly? That's the information you got, that our
the information, like the information of your experiences are still recorded, and that's not lost, but that recording is shelved, it's archived. And then in the new Akashic records, you're blank. All the previous information has been archived, stored, and now you're here without it. And so you're starting fresh, blank slate. And so as an analysis of the data that I received, I can look at that and say it's maybe, and I don't know, again, this is my interpretation, but I would say maybe it's something like let's say, and I'm not talking about my beliefs, because again, the data that comes through, it's not what I believe or what I think, it's the data that I'm given. And so I have to make sense of it. And I'm talking about it, but it doesn't mean I'm necessarily believing this. But it looks to me as though when people talk about they've had more than one lifetime, right? People maybe remember past lives, whatever it is. It seems to me that all of that, you're going to start fresh, no past life, no memories of past lives, no, yeah, you're not bringing anything with you. One of the things I used to always think when I was younger was I should learn as many languages as I can, as many instruments as I can. I should learn as many, I should learn chemistry and physics as much as I can, so that in this life, I may not have the best opportunities, but when I die, hopefully I'll bring some of that. And I remember thinking that even when I was very, very, very young. And I didn't believe in reincarnation. I didn't believe in all of that. I was a militant atheist for much of my late teens and early 20s. But there had been that kind of attitude when I was young. And so I always thought, I think you're not going to be bringing anything forward into the next era, is what I suspect. And again, I could be wrong. I could be misinterpreting it, because the raw data was everything gets reset. The data gets deleted. You get a new sun. You get a new rebirth. It's like a resurrection of the new blank Akashic records. So a new chance to create something new. And it was presented to me as much in a positive way as in a terrifying way. But so that's how I see the solar gates, as here's this one time in maybe 40,000 years, maybe it's shorter. I don't really know, but I feel like that's something along those lines, maybe 36,000 year cycles. I know they talk about the 26,000 year cycle, the long cycle, but I feel like it's more like 36. Anyway, there are these really long stretches of time where there's no exit point, but I feel like now the data came through that the solar gates are going to be open. And when they open, you can exit. For the people that have the coherence and they hold on to themselves, their self, their individuality, their data set, you can take your data set and you can exit. That's the opportunity. And does it have to do with frequency? To a certain extent, yeah, you have to have, in order to have that coherence, you have to have a certain frequency, and you have to, yeah, so I think that is definitely part of it.
And Bigfoot, I didn't mean to hijack your question. I had the wrong understanding. I thought it was here. Well, maybe I had the right understanding, but the negative spin on it. I didn't realize that they give people the opportunity when they get a fresh reset to at least archive the data in some sort of storage. But I'm really glad you went into it, Sasha. So Bigfoot, make sure you get all your questions asked, and thank you for sharing on the recorded space. This is the place to doom deep.
Yeah, well, that was about it, I guess. I just think that maybe what that was, or maybe what that solar gate is something called the music of the spheres. If anybody knows what that is, it's kind of like, I mean, I barely know what it is. I just sort of experienced it, and I've heard some other people talk about it who study this type of thing, who have experiences like this, and they
Well, your intuition is right. It does have to do with frequencies, right? And each sphere and each celestial body having its own frequency. And like, I was saying earlier, you have Saturn, which was the Har sun, Har. And then that was replaced by our current sun, which we call Sol. That's the name of the star. And that's our current sun. And then, maybe we'll have a next sun. And so that idea that each sun or each era has its own frequency and interacts with the earth in a slightly different way because the sun itself has slightly different intensity, or the solar radiation is slightly different. And so what that means is that the ionosphere is going to be slightly different, at a different height, at a different thickness, and that's going to impact the standing wave that we call the Schumann resonance, because it's bouncing off the ionosphere and the surface of the Earth. And the height of the ionosphere is what determines where the bounce happens. So that determines what frequency it is. So if the old sun, our sun, Saturn, if that sun created an ionosphere that was significantly, let's say, lower, then the Schumann frequencies would be different. And so then the frequency you have to tune into in order to interact with the data stream, with the data that's held in our magnetic field. Let's say, if you think of the magnetic field as a magnetic tape, and all our experiences are recorded on this magnetic tape that's just out there, then that's specific to the sun. So the idea of frequency having something to do with it, I think definitely yes. And you can use frequency. I think sometimes people get a little bit over reliant on, Muse or things like this. They want to, am I at 7.83 or am I at 7.92 in terms of the hertz of the frequency of their brainwave? I don't think you have to be that specific. And I think you can feel it inside yourself. So when you have experiences, Bigfoot, I think you'll feel when you're in resonance, and that frequency, the symphony of the stars, all of that, it's always talking about this exact same thing. It's how we are vibrating energies and how we work together, and how we can find the resonance. I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent, so I'm going to stop there, but hopefully some of that was interesting.
Bigfoot, did that answer everything? Can I, you're welcome to stay on stage, but is it okay if I go to Messy Messiah?
Yeah, sure. I'm done.
Yeah, and thank you for your question. Messy Messiah, go ahead. What's your question for David and Sasha?
It's actually not. It's two physical applications in regards to the question from Bigfoot. Thoughts off the top of my head. One,
Hey,
the
Messy Messiah, you're super quiet for me. I don't know if that's how you're coming across to other people.
Oh, is that any better?
It's a little better.
Is that any better?
And I'm the one producing the echo. I'm sorry.
Is anybody else having a hard time hearing Messy Messiah?
Yeah, if you can speak a little bit closer to your mic, that'd be great. Also, we have
I am
echoes.
as close to my mic as possible.
Awesome. Go ahead. Ask your question.
It's not a question. In regards to Bigfoot and his fears question, I have two thoughts on my head that are physical applications and or possible explanations. One, historically, maybe people use that as a term to describe the sound that they heard from spherical UFOs, humming, music sound. Two, what if every celestial body has its own frequency, and when you play that back at a musical tone, you get what is called music of the spheres? That's it. Thank you.
Yeah,
So
that's
you guys,
very good.
about the echo, that's my cell phone. I launched it from my laptop, but when you don't connect the cell phone, sometimes it says like the space is having connection issues. It's going to crash it. So if anybody gets a notification, please let me know, and I'll reconnect the phone again. But we should be fine for these next couple of minutes. Go ahead, David and Sasha.
I was just saying, yeah, those are interesting points.
Is there anything that you sort of held back that you don't know whether you want to share, or that you normally wouldn't share in another space? Now would be the time to put it on the table, because my experience with remote viewers, they're exposed to a lot of data, and they don't want to be labeled as fear mongers, and they actually hold back some dark, gloomy shit. If there's anything like that you do want to share, please do.
David, I'll let you go first if you want to say anything here.
Well, we always have more that we can share, but it's across the spectrum, not always specifically about the pole shift. But and yeah, to a
And it doesn't
degree,
have to be about the pole shift. I mean, anything.
yeah, I understand. To a degree, self-monitoring in public is wise to a certain degree. But I think Sasha's done a pretty good job of explaining her data. And even going into the areas that you are talking about, Doomer, in terms of things that she has not necessarily exposed publicly previously about that. So, I mean, I feel it's a pretty good blend of the information, including stuff that is less, it's more, risky versus stuff that's more safe. What do you think, Sasha?
Well, I mean, I just want to say that I'm not asking you to share anything that would put your lives at risk. However, humanity has been completely traumatized and gaslighted, brainwashed, lobotomized into internalizing at a deep visceral level a shame or a guilt or even a sense of false immorality when it comes to disclosure, when it comes to sharing anything. And if we're facing the end of the world and people still can't share, humanity doesn't stand a chance. So if there's something that is social stigma, but it doesn't put your life at risk to share it. I mean, if the end of the world isn't the time to share it, I honestly don't know when it is.
Yeah, that's a very good. I understand your perspective. It's a very
I mean,
it's a very good perspective that you don't normally hear. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. And I don't even know. I mean, some degree, sure, it's subjective, it's a perspective, but to some degree, it's objectively true, right? I mean, to some degree,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And, here's what I'll say about this. Some of the things I hold back, because the data stream was like, I'm giving you this, but this is maybe just for you to understand and make sense of. And I try to honor that. And then some of it I hold back because uh, I don't want to, die in a mysterious car crash next week. And I know that that does happen a lot. And so I think I do agree with you, Doomer, that the end of the world is nigh. Then you want to share the information. But I feel as though my remote viewing skill has grown so much over the last 2 years. And especially now that I'm using my method, FSI, like I'm getting data that honestly, is startling even to me. And I feel as though I still have a lot to contribute in terms of helping the data stream get information out there. I feel like there's a lot that I can still do and collect data that you might need, uh, that could be even more helpful than what we've talked about today. And so I don't want to get swept up in the moment and reveal too much and then Sasha died in a weird car crash. And so and then all of that, right, and then that kind of stops anything further coming from me or through me. And I feel like my connection with the data stream is strong and good, and so I feel a responsibility, like a sacred duty, I guess, which sounds a bit weird, but there it is. And then the other part of it is, like, even things I've said today about the harvest, there are some people that are going to be upset by that. They're going to be afraid that maybe they're afraid because they don't know how to increase their coherence, even though, I'm telling them, David's telling them, meditate, learn to remote view, do these things that you turn off the TV and start focusing inward. But some people will still feel afraid and they'll be angry because a lot of people would rather experience anger than fear. And so when they start feeling afraid, they just get angry with you for saying something that made them scared. And so I know that there are going to be people who probably will send me messages, angry messages. How dare you say this? This is wrong. This is not what I believe. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. People need to respond with however they feel. But I don't want to alienate people that are worth helping. I don't want to alienate so many people that then my message doesn't get out, because I think we can help each other. And I think, a lot we can save a lot more people. And I don't think there are a lot of people that are trying to save us. So I know some people are relying on the aliens to save us. Maybe that'll happen. Awesome. Maybe it won't. And some people think the government will save them. Maybe the government will. Maybe your government will. I don't think my government will. And so I want us to help each other. I want us to talk about these things. And yeah, so that's the sensitivity about that, is just not to piss too many people off so that then you just get pushed out.
Yeah, I turned the app off on my cell phone. I hope I'm not still producing an echo. So I absolutely am not trying to nudge you in any way to reveal anything that puts your life at risk. However, I've thought longer than most people about this. And I do want to urge everyone to reflect on the very internalized human, in quotes, feeling that sharing information or a subjective perspective, how not sharing it out of respect or fear of offending somebody is morally beneficial. This is an area where I feel virtually all 8 billion people are hijacked and other people are wrong and I'm right. The world ending, especially the solar radiation and everybody going, not everybody, but a lot of people going nuts, does not have a room safely padded for people who get offended by reality. What we have is a world where there's going to be people who are genuine victims. There's going to be people who have genuine courage and are good people. And some of those people are going to be intelligent, they're going to be virtuous, and they just won't have the information. And those are the people who are going to die when we protect everybody else's fragile ego that gets offended by reality. We're the most offensive thing are the people in the know with resources who aren't sharing the truth. And it is incumbent upon all of us to have to internalize the moral imperative to offend people who can simply leave the doom room or can simply stop listening, who don't want to hear somebody's perspective or don't want to hear the information. We have a responsibility to offend the world with the truth. The amount, there will be people who die simply because they don't get the information, and those those who are saying we're fear mongering have a disrespect for the basic intelligence of humanity. Anybody who, if people actually believe that somebody's going to believe in the pole shift just because they listen to a doom space and they're not going to do the research themselves, or they don't try to find out where the pole shift is, those people don't stand a chance anyway. And this is a cold, hard perspective, but it's objectively true. We're going to be dealing with harsh game theoretical realities, and disclosure doesn't feel good. And if anybody has witnessed a victim of abuse, experienced abuse, betrayal blindness that you get around family members saying, oh no, don't share, don't reveal, anybody who's testified in court as a major witness, all of these things are an internalized feeling that sharing the truth or exposing evil is dirty, and it's actually the moral thing. And so we actually have an element of our biology that's been forced into us that we need to overcome if we want to be moral beings. And it requires offending probably the majority of people. This is my perspective. And I think it's something that is deeply counterintuitive. And I absolutely don't mean for you to put your life at risk, Sasha. And that's just my perspective, but I have a harsh, severe view on this. And I think even I myself have to overcome that, because it doesn't feel right. Like everything about disclosure, I believe, is offensive and speaks to a deep betrayal. And just so you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's just funny because we talk about, oh, weird car accidents as though it's a little bit absurd, but in reality, I mean, strange things do happen to people who explore some of these topics, and
No,
we
it's
can't
true.
ignore that.
No, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. No, I'm saying that when you hear the talk about disclosure, and I mean, this is a personal pet peeve of mine, but it pisses me off to no end, right? I mean, people like Stefan, what's his last name again? Stefan what?
Burns.
Burns.
Stefan.
We need to get him in here.
Yeah, I know. I invited him, I think. I can't remember. I ran out of space on my tweet because I wanted the link to be above the hidden line. So I think I included him in one of the tweets about
we
this.
need to get him in here. That charming,
Yeah.
charismatic guy. I want to hear what he has to say about the pole shift and all these Aurora. But you know, he should be telling people why we're seeing all these Aurora, why the sun is wigging out, because there's scientific people who look into him.
Well, okay, so here's the thing about Stefan Burns for the audience. He makes video. I just discovered him last night. He makes videos about the Schumann resonance, what it is, how it works, the ionosphere. It's an amazing YouTube channel, and so I recommend people go check it out. And you know, I think at some point I didn't watch all of his videos, but I kind of scanned the titles and I watched a couple of them just to kind of see what he was talking about. And it seems to me that at some point he shifted and now he's, oh, I was wrong. It's not going to be a big deal. It's just a polar drift. It's not a flip. It's not a drastic shift. The North Pole is just going to.
So you get what I'm talking about. I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, I think something happened, but that's what I'm saying. He was really grounded in the science and he was saying like something's happening, and then at some point all of a sudden he's saying, oh no, never mind, it's nothing, just don't even worry about it. So again, when people have that kind of a flip, I do wonder, have they been approached, have they been contacted, have they been given a reason to change their story?
Yeah, and if you're grounded in the science, then you know why auroras happen. Auroras happen for one reason and one reason only. It's the electric magnetic influence from the sun not being sufficiently shielded from Van Allen belts, penetrating the ionosphere. And they're called aurora borealis because the shielding is weakest at the poles. And so we normally only see them in the northern, I think that's the borealis part, the borealis, and somebody had a debate over this. Oh, you know, yeah. I mean, technically, they're no longer aurora borealis; they're just aurora now. But the aurora only happen because of weakened magnetic shielding. That's the only way they get produced, right? And so if you're grounded in the science, you can't be like, oh, what's happening with all these aurora? They're happening because of the pole shift. Yeah. Messiah, go ahead. And then we have one more person in the queue, and then Sasha and David, do you want to wrap it up after that?
Yep, sounds good. Yes.
All right. Yeah, Messy Messiah, go ahead.
When any of you are practicing
you're super quiet, Messy Messiah. If you can try to get a bit closer.
I don't know why. When any of you are doing your practices of meditation and or whatever, or even just throughout the day, do you feel like you are, and I don't want to say trying to think up ideas, but either having downloads or distractions hit you? It's one or the other.
Yeah, for me, for sure. I think when people psychic spiritual development, to me, one component of it is an increased level of awareness that sort of happens as a byproduct of development. And this can take the form of, but again, this isn't necessarily remote viewing. It's just, but it's part of the process of basically psychic information. But you can start to get synchronicities. You can start to get information that insights, right? That lead you to start down a certain path, or you go do some research and you're like, holy cow, like that was right. You know, like I didn't even, because that's the same kind of pattern I see when I'm actually in remote viewing. And again, remote viewing is a scientific structured approach. It's an application of psychic ability versus psychic ability is just sort of spontaneous, or you can develop it in other ways. But the two are linked together. The difference is that remote viewing uses science to try to produce a reproducible result every time, kind of a thing. But clearly you could have these, you can have visions and all sorts of stuff can happen. But yeah, I think that this is a general byproduct of increased awareness for an individual. You'll tend to see these kinds of things more frequently. And I think this happens with the remote viewer. So again, remote viewing to me is valuable to a certain degree for the public in simply like in a very simple way. Like the person doesn't have to become an expert remote viewer, right? But they can go like, hey, I've never had any of these crazy wild experiences. I would really like to have that. Like, how do I do that? Right? I don't know. Right? So it's like, but if they get engaged with the remote viewing process and prove to themselves that psi is possible, especially for them, that they're not, incapable of such a thing, right? Then that process just in general can start to open up more awareness, even if they don't take remote viewing to an extreme. So it's just sort of a point I'm making is that, and you can use different tools. You could use meditation, prayer, like there's a bunch of different kind of ways to approach this. But yeah, 100%. Yes.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I would say that, as my remote viewing ability increases, the synchronicities increase, the 1111, 222, all of that stuff increases. You get more and more plugged in to the data stream. And so you start resonating with reality in a different way. Your intuition gets stronger and better and more accurate. I had terrible intuition before I started remote viewing. I would get lost all the time. Oh my goodness. If I was walking down the street and I knew where I was going and I thought, I think I should turn left here, that was always the wrong choice. That I should have turned right. And then once I learned remote viewing, I learned what it feels like when you're tapping into intuition, when you're tapping into your real psychic ability. And so now my intuition is a lot better. And it just, again, it's that focusing on yourself, your experience, I don't want to use the word spirituality because it's so overused and it means so many different things to different people, but the ethereal, that part of yourself that's not all about the rat race, about making coffee in the morning, about, I don't know, right? People getting their kids to school, whatever it is. Like you have to take time and realize, and this is something we were talking about much earlier when we were saying consciousness is the fundamental of this reality. The physical, tangible, material world is an overlay. And so remote viewing reminds you of that every time you do it. And the more you recognize that, the more you understand that, the more you can use it to your advantage, right? So I think there are a lot of benefits that come from it. I hope that answers the question.
Messy Messiah, does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, no, I'm enjoying the space. Thanks.
Good.
It's I'm just I like everybody. I'm just coming from a different perspective. So thank you.
Yeah, and we totally welcome different perspectives here, even if they disagree with us. We've got Amy, Abductee Journal, in here. Amy, it's awesome to have you in here in the space coming up, asking a question. You're probably going to be our last question. In the interest of boldness and with a forewarning, the last person in the queue I'm going to let up, their handle and their name is Rick Duty. So I don't know who this is. Just be forewarned, it may be a troll, it may be a cataclysm, it may be a catastrophe. The world might end today and Rick Duty might shit all over us. But we're going to go to Amy first, and then we'll find out what this package has to unleash upon this space. Amy, welcome.
Hey. So Sasha, thank you for explaining how you perceive remote viewing is like. That's been really insightful. I just wanted to give kind of my quick story, my experience in attempting to do something like remote viewing. It wasn't the proper methodology. It was just me just messing around. And so, like, I'm not saying that I'm a remote viewer or I'm even any good at it, but this was my quick story. So I was communicating with someone who's quite psychic, and so we started to kind of like connect psychically together just to kind of test it out. So I got to learn what he knows. And so I started to, I'm a lifetime abductee. I've done a lot of research. And so I started to target the hybrids that I have to interact with. And basically what I would do, because, you know, this wasn't a blinded target or anything. So of course I didn't trust what was coming up at all, but I was just like messing around. So I would, you know, relax my mind, and then I would grab onto their signature and even like give them a name just to like hold on to that signature of like their core signature. And I would just like try to like just relax my mind to see what information flowed through. And when I started to do that, I noticed an uptick in bruises. And usually I've done quite a bit of research. I've noticed their pattern of bruising. They use like pain compliance tactics to like basically let you know when they don't like what you're doing. So there was a huge uptick in the bruises, and I was suddenly getting, because I was like working in a research lab, and I was suddenly getting these like visuals of the lab burning down just out of nowhere. Like they just, and there was this intense fear that the people that I worked with would get hurt. And when I did like several regressions, because I've worked with David Jacobs, so I learned his techniques in regression, what came up was basically the hybrids were threatening to burn down the, get someone, just, they don't need to do it themselves. They can just get someone to burn down the lab and cause mayhem, basically. And so that, like, I pushed through that kind of subliminal fear tactic, and I kept doing it. And then it led to basically, it led to them basically attacking my brain to the point that like I was targeting this one guy who I actually like, he was harassing me down here, and I suspect he was a hybrid. And I like potentially saw a business meeting that he was in, and literally right after, I suddenly felt like drained and tired, and I couldn't focus. I went home, I slept for 3 hours, and then I slept for 12 more hours. I was just completely, they had definitely like targeted me. And it's like a huge, huge faux pas in their society to remote view them specifically, but potentially if you're gaining knowledge that they don't want you to have, or whoever like doesn't want you to have, they may be, you know. And that's what, like, it might be empty threats that they're using to get you to back down. And that's been my like personal experience, but they did physically attack me for doing that, for targeting them. And again, I have no clue if what came up was even valid, but I just wanted to share that perspective, that they, you know, that they definitely don't like it when we use their abilities, you know, which it's not their abilities, but they have gained authority over it, you know. So it's not really a question, it's just a story that I have, a personal anecdote.
It's mirrored by the story we have that was heard from Jason Giorgiani about CIA having a remote asset that got told multiple times not to review the dark side of the moon. And I think still till this day, his body is in like a state of suspended animation. They trapped his soul on the moon, and his family receives payments for the inconvenience. So it seems like, yeah, it's like a middle finger to them when you're remote viewing. If you have any stories like this, David and Sasha, please by all means drop them in the Doom Room if it doesn't put your life at risk. Yeah. And
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say I appreciate Amy sharing the story, because those, you know, that type of information is difficult to communicate to other people. But like you said, Doomer, if information is not shared, then it basically it dies essentially, which is not useful.
And maybe people right? Like in information,
Yes. Right.
yeah, I mean,
Right.
I'm very
Yeah.
underprepared, but I have a fierce informational approach. And I think, I mean, like, when is this thing happening, right? If you know when this thing is happening, that's probably 50%. It's probably as important as having a bunker in water. If the difference is 2 years or 20 years. So information is probably one of the most valuable things that we have.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think you clarified it for me at the end, Amy, but just to double check. So you were saying the bruises, because I was wondering if the bruises were more of a result of your increased awareness because you were engaging in kind of that process of moving into this other kind of mental space. But it sounds like it wasn't necessarily that. It was, as you said, an attack. Is that correct? That was the bruises were the attack.
Yeah, no, I've done
Okay.
extensive research prior to even attempting the remote viewing. And for sure, like they've messed with my surveillance equipment, like, and they use, because I've looked into the areas that they tend to bruise at, and it's like, very even pressure marks. And it's very sensitive areas of the body. And it's like, if you look at I think the Navy has a protocol, and it's called ping compliance, where they use that, and it's basically to gain your cooperation without like permanently damaging anything. But the level of pain that they can inflict is pretty high, so it is probably for the most part effective unless you're just completely uncooperative. But yeah, it's not. And also to add, Sasha was talking about the synchronicities. Like when I started my research, I was every day I was writing down every time I saw 1111, 111, 222, all that stuff. And over 5 years of daily tracking that, and then bruises and surveillance equipment and everything else, like there is a very clear, I'm 100% certain that when they're targeting, um synchronicities shoot up, and then they come visit, and then the synchronicities go down, the sightings. Now I don't think, I think it's because they're psychic, and so when they're targeting you, they're amping you up, and so that's what's like. So I don't think it necessarily means you're an abductee or anything like that, but that's just interesting that in Sasha's experience, like as she's been like amping up her psychic abilities, she's seeing more synchronicities. It makes sense to me, whereas I'm dealing with a psychic society that's targeting me, and so that's amping me up. And then like I've noticed this trend, and it's to the T. Like there's no doubt in my mind. Yeah, it's a good it's good red flag to look out for whenever I'm going about my business. So it's been useful.
Yeah, and I appreciate, again, I appreciate you sharing the information, as well as all the other individuals who asked questions earlier. Um, the broader perspective of part of what you're saying leads me to the idea conceptually of remote influencing, or the idea that maybe humanity. Let's look at it more like a broader scale. Whether or not we are, because that would directly more time with your experience, but is that on a broader scale, there's influences that affect us to say, let's say, psychically suppress us. Not don't get more information, don't look at these areas with your psychic powers, things of that nature, right? And in my opinion, there is evidence for this. One place that I can point to is the idea of the hitchhiker effect. So, and it's only been in recent years. I think if you go back a decade, it didn't exist. So it's just something that I'm kind of mentioning and noting. But it is the experience where some people who remote view certain kinds of targets experience phenomenon that can happen that are more in your space after the fact. And I have seen this with not necessarily remote viewing. So what I'm trying to say is, like, I think there are mechanics that correlate with this concept that spread across the spectrum, which can include remote viewing. But an example would be is if you put your consciousness more in the direction of Skinwalker Ranch, that people have noted effects like this. And in fact, I experienced it scanning me at one point when I was up in Utah, and I wasn't even I wasn't even gonna go to Skinwalker. That was the point. The trip had nothing to do with Skinwalker, but it picked up on me and interacted to a degree. So what I'm trying to say is, like, I think that there are influences, and some of these can be, like maybe at Skinwalker, it's more of an automated system. Maybe it's active or passive, but it may not be confined to that one particular site or location, and there may be more than one faction, right? So, and of course, there are, in my opinion, there's always the government, like you mentioned, the military, right? So it's like, well, what's the military doing, right? And Sasha and I have covered some of this in our unlisted channel. We have talked about. We did a video on remote influencing. We covered the documents that came out of the Stargate project by the military. And we see the potential that remote viewing was part of a program that also included remote influencing. And yet, interestingly enough, there isn't much talk about what they were doing with the remote influencing. Yet, if you go into the documents, you can clearly see they were doing some very interesting things, and those experiments were actually, some of them were covered in the civilian sector 10 to 20 years later. So it's like, it wasn't just a fluke, and they didn't just blow it off. There were actual scientists that continued that work after the fact. So that sort of thing is real to a degree, right? But we're only allowed to know so much. So yeah, anyways, that's just sort of my comments on your experience a little bit. Sasha?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Amy, for being part of the conversation and sharing your experiences. I agree with David, and I think it also sounds like you have a strong natural psi ability. And so you're going to have kind of these experiences and aligned with what we've been talking about. You're probably going to have more of these kinds of experiences as things progress. And so yeah, it's I think it's good that you're exposing yourself to this information and thinking about it. I would suggest shielding, learning a little bit about shielding so that you're a little bit more protected. Um, that would probably be a good idea. At this point, I think we're both a little bit tired to start that whole conversation, but it's something that that you can find out more about, and you can also reach out to us as well. But yeah, I think to me it just sounds like just because there are entities that don't necessarily want you to have access to certain information, the truth of it is our birthright. Our psychic abilities are our birthright. We are a part of the underlying consciousness of this reality. And so, we always talk about going out to the, people will say, even when people talk about out-of-body experiences or astral projection, it's always this idea of going outwards. But as you become an advanced remote viewer, you learn you can go inwards, and the data is there within you as much as it is in some Akashic record that is external to your body, right? It's inside of you. You're part of the data stream. You're part of the source. You're part of the Godhead. And so you have the right to access whatever data you want to access, and you have a right to be protected as well. And so these are just things. But yeah, keep noticing the synchronicities and keep logging them, and because the more you notice them, the more they occur. If you write them down, and even other synchronicities, things that happen and you're like, that is too much of a coincidence, write it down and find the meaning in it. So I think that's fantastic.
We're going to close the space down. Messy Messiah, I saw your hand up. If it's fairly brief, I'll give you a chance to speak. All right. Yeah, and Sasha, it's obvious that your aggressive intensity scared the shit out of Rick Duty. They just dropped down from the stage. So I feel very protected in your presence. And
That's awesome.
unless if anybody has anything really quick they want to say, other than that, I'm going to hand the mic over to you, Sasha and David, and then to close it out with Fringe. And I want to let everybody know today is absolutely my fault for not being filled up with more listeners. I'm truly overwhelmed, and I clearly can't do two things at once. And so after we do the next space, I'm probably not going to agree to schedule spaces until I actually have my life together. The crypto world is completely all-consuming, and I just want to say, I just want to give you both an unconditional apology for not being prepared today. Sasha and David, take it away and close us out.
Yeah, Doomer and French, I just want to say very grateful for the opportunity to interact with both of you today, and to everyone here that's listening, and along with the people who asked questions. It was a very great experience for me. I always want to have as many experiences as I can because I always learn from those. And so I very much appreciate that. And Doomer, at least from my perspective, I wouldn't worry about the recording piece. As I've said, Sasha and I experienced that with someone else. And so, if remote influencing is real, they might have got you today. But
they definitely
yeah,
did.
just
somebody.
Yeah. So yeah. So anyways, if you have any interest in anything that we've talked about, you can look us up on YouTube, Patreon, Magic in the Noise, and
absolutely
appreciate your time.
And follow me
Thank you.
back with your super anonymous account if you want, because
Okay.
you can easily DM me that way. But I will absolutely
Okay.
check you guys out on YouTube.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. I know, I just want to say the same. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to the people that asked questions. Thank you to everyone for being here, for participating. Thank you for your interest. This is something that is, I think, important to be aware of. And so I appreciate that people are interested. And, this has been a really long X Space. This is the first one we've ever done. It's the first one I've been in like this.
We
So,
never tell people the first time how long these are. Never.
I didn't really know what to expect, but it's been great. I think I've been maybe fading a little bit as the hours have worn on. But no, I'm really glad. This was an amazing experience. Thank you so much, and I'm glad to have had the opportunity to share the data that it came through me to be shared, and so that was excellent. And again, like the recording, like David said, it just seems to be a glitch that happens around us when we're sharing some information. But if anyone did capture it, then yeah, we'd love to have a copy of it, and we can kind of edit it maybe and throw it up somewhere. That would be nice, so that just more people can see what we're talking
some
about.
of our CIA handlers will hopefully be willing to part with the information. And I did get a message from someone who said they started recording when I said it wasn't recorded. And so I asked them to attach the attachment to the 3 different posts. So I hope they do that.
Nice. And just thank you to both of you, to Fringe, to Doomer. Thank you for having these kinds of spaces. It's so important. Thank you for managing the conversations well. The community that you're building is significant. It's important. It's going to do great things.
You're most welcome. And I plan on doing more pole shift stuff. And like I said, if I do the Adam and Eve story read, just join in spaces. Feel free to come up and join the conversation, because I want to offend way more people with the stuff.
Fantastic. That sounds good. And Fringe as well. You've been excellent just in helping us navigate our way to this. So thank you for that. And that's all. Thank you so much, everyone.
Fringe, thank you so much for being the rock of the space and being an amazing co-host. I'm going to let you have the last words. I want to remind everybody to doom hard, doom dark, and doom deep. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys all for being here. Thank you to Sasha and David. We appreciate you being here today, and we will see you guys all next week. Good night.
Night, everyone.